Chapter 346. Jingshan Finger, Lower Earth Rank. A line of words appeared clearly on the stone tablet. It was indeed an Earth Rank martial arts technique. The man in charge of recording looked at Elder Emo-tsang with his mouth agape. According to the rules, the activation of an Earth Rank martial arts technique had to be recorded separately. Furthermore, the dean and all the elders had to be informed. Elder Emo-tsang's heart was boiling like lava. He didn't know how to vent his anger. All he could do was bellow. Hurry up and record it. Yes. Yes. The man hurriedly took out another book and recorded it down with trembling fingers. The person standing behind Elder Emo-tsang was even more flustered. He tried his best to minimize his presence, not daring to utter another word. He even held his breath. Everyone could see that Elder Emo-tsang was on the verge of exploding. Anyone who dared to approach him would be in trouble. Elder Emo-tsang raised his head abruptly and looked at the second floor of the library. Although there were many books in the library, there were only a few books on Earth Rank martial arts techniques. Moreover, they were all hidden very well. How did Chu Luiyue find it? He wanted to rush in and chase Chu Luiyue out, but he could not. In the end, Chu Luiyue was only reading in there. She did nothing else. Even if she was reading at a breakneck speed, it was not her fault. Therefore, they could only continue to wait. If Chu Luiyue continued to behave like this, they would have to wait until the time was up for her to come out. Elder Emo-tsang, Chu Luiyue may have unlocked an Earth Rank martial arts technique, but it's not all for nothing. Look, it's been a while, but she hasn't continued to read other books. She must be studying that one. According to the agreement, she can only enter the library to borrow books, but she can't take them out. Therefore, she must be spending all her time on that one book. What do you think? The man in charge of recording said cautiously. Elder Emo-tsang's face darkened. Of course, he had thought of that, but it was an Earth Rank martial arts technique after all. Now that Chu Luiyue had found him, he felt that he had suffered a great loss. Last year, the student who obtained first place in the Qingjiao competition didn't manage to obtain an Earth Rank martial technique from the other academies. You guys stay here and watch. I'll report this matter to the president. Yes. When Elder Emo-tsang arrived at Qing Han's residence, it was already night time. Light seeped through the window of Qing Han's room. Standing outside the door, Elder Emo-tsang could vaguely hear the voices of several people talking. He knocked on the door, and the voices inside stopped. The door was opened. It was Qing Han. Under the illumination of the lantern light, his complexion did not look very good. Emo-tsang. Why are you here? What is it? Elder Emo-tsang looked over his shoulder. There were two other people in the room. They were the people sent by the other two academies to investigate Hing Jingchua and Yang Jianqing. It seemed like the three of them didn't have a good conversation. Elder Emo-tsang hurriedly replied. Dean. There is an urgent matter that I need to inform you immediately. Qing Han was troubled by these two people and didn't know how to get rid of them. Elder Emo-tsang's arrival came at the right time. He glanced at Elder Emo-tsang and asked, Elder Emo-tsang? Is it urgent? Elder Emo-tsang understood and nodded without hesitation. Qing Han turned to look at the two people. I'm sorry, but it seems like we have to stop here today. The two people knew that Qing Han was trying to escape, but they didn't want to expose him, so they got up and left. After they left, Qing Han let Elder Emo-tsang into the room and heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Emo-tsang asked tentatively. Dean, it seems like things aren't going well. Qing Han was frustrated. Yang Jianqing and Hing Jingchua are both dead, and there isn't even a corpse left behind. Where am I supposed to find any clues? They've already followed them to the academy, but they still haven't found anything. If they can't find anything, they'll just say that I'm covering for them. Ching Han felt that he was being wronged. However, the matter had blown up, and everyone knew that they were investigating, so he couldn't just chase them out. He rubbed his temples. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Why are you here? Elder Mo Tsang's anger had mostly subsided, but it was mostly replaced by uneasiness and anxiety. Before he came, he had been thinking about how to tell the dean about this. Be it the dean or Tai Yen Academy, they had all suffered too much at the hands of Chu Luiyue. This matter would only make things worse. After deliberating for a long time, he finally decided to tell the truth. Chu Luiyue found an earth-grade martial arts technique in the library. Ching Han's expression froze. Elder Mo Tsang had already expected this reaction, so he tried to persuade him. Dean, don't worry, which one did she find? Ching Han asked in an urgent tone. Elder Mo Tsang thought for a moment and said, I think it's Jingshan finger. This martial arts technique is earth grade. Crash. Bang! Ching Han stood up abruptly, and the chair under him toppled over. He grabbed Elder Mo Tsang's collar. What did you say? Elder Mo Tsang recounted the matter with difficulty. Earth grade. Fortunately, she has stopped studying this book. Bam! Ching Han pushed him out of the library. Elder Mo Tsang staggered a few steps and crashed into the wall. Ching Han's strength was extremely great. This collision almost cracked his shoulder blade, but he didn't dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. He rubbed his shoulders, only to see that Ching Han had already left with large strides. Dean! He was shocked and quickly chased after him. As he chased after Ching Han, he recalled Ching Han's reaction. The dean seemed to be particularly concerned about this matter. Even if Chu Luiyue had obtained an earth-grade martial arts technique, the dean's reaction should not have been so intense. He frowned and quickly caught up with Ching Han. Inside the library, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged. In front of her, a book floated quietly, flipping page by page. She stared at the words and pictures on the book, imprinting them in her mind. Jingshan finger. Although it was only earth grade, it was one of the best martial arts techniques in the library. This was a martial arts technique that was related to finger techniques. A martial arts technique of this level was not something that could be mastered in a short period of time, so Chu Luiyue planned to memorize it first and practice it seriously when she had the time. Earth-grade martial arts techniques were something that ordinary cultivators would need to read hundreds of times before they could begin to understand and thousands of times before they could master it. However, Chu Luiyue was different. She had read many martial arts techniques that were more advanced than this one, so it did not take her much effort to read this one. However, when she had read 1/3 of the book, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why was this Jingshan finger more complicated and obscure than the one she had read before? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 347. She started reading from the beginning with uncertainty and realized that her intuition was right. This Jingshan finger was indeed more exquisite than the finger techniques she had practiced before. It was not obvious at the start, but the feeling became stronger as she read on. Looking at the middle, Chu Luiyue could already imagine what kind of shocking power Jingshan finger would have after successfully cultivating it. Her heart raced uncontrollably, and all the blood in her body seemed to be boiling. If she guessed correctly, this Jingshan finger was definitely at the level of an upper-stage earth-stage martial art. Even in the Tianling dynasty, an upper-stage earth-stage martial art technique was rare. Chu Luiyue really did not expect that such a martial art technique would be hidden in the inconspicuous library of Tai Yen Academy. After a short moment of excitement, another question surfaced in Chu Luiyue's mind. Since this Jingshan finger was comparable to an upper-stage earth-stage martial art technique, why was it judged as a lower-stage earth-stage martial art technique? Moreover, the people of Tai Yen Academy did not seem to know the true level of this Jingshan finger. Otherwise, they would not have casually placed it on the second floor. Chu Luiyue maintained the doubts in her heart and continued to look behind. When she finished 2/3 of the book, she finally realized something. This martial art technique seemed to be incomplete. Of course, this book looked intact from the outside. There were no gaps, and the contents were very coherent. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to tell that there was a problem. However, Chu Luiyue had practiced an earth stage martial art technique before, so she quickly realized that this Jingxin finger was not the complete version. Chu Luiyue frowned and continued reading. After flipping through this book, she finally confirmed her guess and knew why it was only classified as a lower stage earth stage martial art technique. This Jingxin finger was indeed an incomplete martial art technique. If someone practiced according to the instructions in this book, they would still be able to master an earth stage martial art technique. However, the power that could be used would be greatly reduced compared to its original potential. However, if one could find the missing parts of this Jingxin finger and complete it, it would instantly increase by a few levels. Although a low-level earth rank martial skill was precious, it was not worth mentioning when compared to an upper-level earth rank martial skill. Now that there was a chance to obtain an earth stage upper-level martial skill, Chu Luiyue naturally wouldn't let it go. She looked at the Jingxin finger again, imprinting it deeply into her mind. After that, she stood up and continued searching, hoping to find other things related to the Jingxin finger. Outside the library, night fell, and the sky was completely dark. Qinghan rushed over from afar and saw that the surroundings were dark. Only the candlelight on the second floor of the compendium pavilion was exceptionally clear. His heart felt as if it had been struck by something. Then, he quickened his pace and rushed over. The two guards in charge of guarding the library saw his figure and immediately saluted in fear and trepidation. "Greetings, Principal." Qinghan ignored them and immediately looked at the stone tablet beside him. The stone tablet, which had always been dull and plain, was now lit up with a large amount of starlight. Above the vast expanse of starlight, there was an abnormally bright star. Even if all the other stars were added together, they wouldn't be as dazzling as this one. His vision turned black and he staggered, almost falling to the ground. "Principal. What's wrong?" The two guards saw that something was wrong with Qinghan and asked carefully. Qinghan held his forehead and lowered his head in silence for a while. Only then did he suppress the emotions in his heart and calm himself down. He turned around and hid the trace of panic in his eyes. "How much has Chu Luiyue read now?" "Principal, don't worry. Ever since Chu Luiyue entered, all the books she has read have been recorded. They are all in these two booklets. Please take a look." One of them immediately handed the booklets over. Qinghan took the two booklets. Obviously, one was a normal record and the other was a special record of earth rank martial skills. He quickly skimmed through the two books. In fact, he was no longer interested in the normal record book. Even though it was almost filled with words, it was not as shocking as the lone line of words on the second booklet. His face was like a stiff mask. Although there was no expression on his face, it looked inexplicably unnatural. It was so strange that it sent chills down one's spine. "Principal," Chu Luiyue read very quickly in the beginning, but ever since she found the earth rank martial skill, she hasn't done anything. The other person quickly glanced at Qinghan, trying to ease the atmosphere. However, he soon realized that Qinghan's face had turned even uglier. "Shut up." Qinghan couldn't take it anymore and threw the booklet at the person who spoke. That person was terrified and immediately knelt down to apologize. "Principal, please calm down. Please calm down." Seeing this, the other person felt a chill in his heart and quickly knelt down as well. They had never seen the principal so angry in public. The principal seemed to be angrier than expected about this matter. At this moment, Elder Mo Tsang finally caught up with them. He saw the two people kneeling on the ground begging for mercy and stopped in his tracks. Even though Ching Han's back was facing him, it wasn't hard to imagine what kind of expression he had. Just as he was hesitating about what to say, another line of words appeared on the stone tablet. Phaseless manual, middle stage dark rank. Chu Luiyue started again. He immediately said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and continue writing." The two people who were kneeling on the ground were shocked. They quickly looked up and saw the words on the stone tablet. Their faces all paled in unison. Didn't Chu Luiyue already open an earth rank martial skill? Why did she start reading other books? Ching Han also noticed this and immediately looked over. When he saw that it was only a dark rank martial skill, his tense heart relaxed a little. Elder Mo Tsang walked up to him. Seeing that his expression was less tense, he advised him in a low voice. Earth rank martial skills are difficult to understand. With Chu Luiyue's current level and strength, it would be difficult for her to read through it. It seems that she has given up. Ching Han rubbed his eyebrows. I hope so. However, in the next moment, he suddenly thought of something. His eyes widened and he looked at the second floor. What if Chu Luiyue didn't give up? As if to confirm his guess, another line of words appeared on the stone tablet. It was still a dark rank martial skill. The stars on it were still increasing. In other words, Chu Luiyue was still looking for something. Ching Han's heart was filled with fear. Could it be that Chu Luiyue had discovered the secret in the library? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 348. Chu Luiyue seems to be on the second floor. She seems to be more talented as a mystic cultivator and celestial physician. Why isn't she on the third or fourth floor? Elder Mo Tsang did not notice Ching Han's expression and muttered to himself. This made Ching Han even more worried. That's right. If she doesn't know something, why is Chu Luiyue only on the second floor and not on the other floors? She started reading other books after finding the earth rank martial skill. She's obviously looking for something. Ching Han could not help but feel anxious. However, he could not rush in and ask Chu Luiyue to stop. The words on the stone tablet continued to appear. Chu Luiyue was still flipping through the books on the second floor at an extraordinary speed. One book. One book. Another book. Ching Han stood there motionless. The others did not dare to move and could only wait with him. After a long time, Elder Mo Tsang finally asked. Dean, Chu Luiyue is going to be in there for a while. You're not going to wait here forever, are you? Ching Han was even more frustrated. Of course, he knew. This was what he was most worried about. Previously, he did not expect Chu Luiyue to find the Jingxin finger and even open it to take a look. However, it would be strange if she continued to stay here and would attract more attention. Be careful. Record down all the books that Chu Luiyue borrows. With that, he waved his sleeves and left. Elder Mo Tsang felt that Ching Han's reaction was strange and could not help but look at the library again. What's the dean worried about? After Ching Han and Elder Mo Tsang left, only the other two were left to guard the library. Since things had developed to this point, they did not dare to be careless and continued to guard the library. Time ticked by and soon, the moon was high in the sky. However, the lights on the second floor were still on. One of them yawned and could not help but grumble. How long is Chu Luiyue going to read? What time is it? Why isn't she asleep yet? The other person was also affected and became tired. Who wouldn't want to be able to enter the book collection pavilion and read as they wish? If it were you, would you be willing to sleep in there? Besides, she had found an earth rank martial skill. Who knew how excited she was? In any case, if I were to obtain an earth grade martial skill, I would read it even if I didn't sleep or rest. That may be the case, but everyone needs to rest, right? She's not tired, but I've written so many words today. I'm tired. The two of them waited for a while longer. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had no intention of stopping, they had no choice but to take turns recording. This isn't. Chu Luiyue quickly browsed through another bookshelf, but she still did not find anything. Ever since she discovered Jingshan Finger, she increased her reading speed. Until now, she had already read 1/5 of all the books on the second floor. However, she didn't find anything related to Jingshan Finger. That martial technique scroll was like a lost pearl in the vast sea. Chu Luiyue sighed softly. Perhaps there was only one scroll of Jingshan Finger here. After all, if Tai Yen Academy really had the complete version, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Chu Luiyue was about to continue moving forward when Dumpling suddenly appeared in front of her. Its round eyes were filled with obvious disapproval. She was stunned for a moment. Dumpling, what's the matter? Dumpling crossed its paws and placed them under its head. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but burst out laughing. You want me to sleep? Dumpling nodded vigorously. Chu Luiyue shook her head. Don't worry, I'm not sleepy now. She had been thinking about Jingshan Finger and didn't want to rest. Just as she was about to move forward again, Dumpling stopped her again and shook its head frantically. Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly and tapped its head. All right, stop shaking me. I'll go to sleep. Only then was Dumpling satisfied. It pounced on her and rubbed its head against her face. Perhaps because it was too tired, it fell asleep very quickly. The next morning, Chu Luiyue woke up very early and continued following the path that she saw the day before. The two people in charge of recording outside the library had stayed up all night and had obvious dark circles under their eyes. They couldn't even remember when Chu Luiyue ended yesterday. They only realized that Chu Luiyue had started again. The two of them were angry but didn't dare to say anything. They could only accept their fate and continue recording. Ching Han didn't sleep well the entire night. Even when he woke up in the morning, the frightening images in his mind hadn't dissipated. They were all related to Chu Luiyue. And Jingshan Finger. He felt uneasy and planned to take another look at the library. However, he was stopped not long after he walked out. It was still about the people investigating Yang Jianqing and Hing Jingchue. The families of these two people had been brought over and needed to be interrogated by the people from the three academies. Ching Han had no choice but to leave with them. The matter at the library was temporarily put aside. Country Yao Qin, the palace. The Empress looked at the two people standing in front of her and couldn't help but ask. Is there really no news? The two of them nodded. Her Majesty, we've secretly searched the entire imperial city, but we still haven't found any traces of the fourth princess. The Empress seemed to have lost all her energy as she leaned against the chair dejectedly. It had been a few days, but there was no news of Rongzhen. These two were from the Xi family. Since they said so, it meant that they really couldn't find her. The Empress closed her eyes weakly. She wanted to ask Si Ting to find out more information from Chu Luiyue, but Si Ting refused. Before she could find a suitable person, Chu Luiyue went to Tai Yen Academy. She really had no other choice now. I understand. You can go back first. She waved her hand and asked the two of them to leave. Everyone in the palace knew that they were from the Xi family, and they claimed that they were here to deliver things on behalf of the Xi family. Hence, they naturally couldn't stay for long. After the two of them left, the Empress sat in her seat and didn't speak for a long time. What's bothering you, Empress? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from the door. The Empress was shocked as she looked up and saw Emperor Jiawen standing there. She was shocked and hurriedly stood up to bow. Greetings, Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen walked over and helped her up. You don't have to be so polite, Empress. The Empress smiled and looked at the few palace servants at the door as she reprimanded them. His Majesty is here, but none of you reported his arrival. You, Empress, you don't have to be angry at them. I didn't want them to be like this on purpose. Emperor Jiawen shook his head and didn't care. The Empress hurriedly adjusted her expression and smiled. Since your Majesty has said so, I naturally have no reason to pursue the matter. You haven't been here for a long time, and I'm really flattered. Emperor Jiawen said, I've been a little cold to you and your son recently. I heard that you weren't in a good mood recently, so I came to take a look. Oh right, I haven't seen Jinjin in a long time. Why don't you come with me? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 349. Upon hearing the first half of the sentence, the Empress was still elated, but the second half made her feel worse. She looked up in shock. What? Your Majesty, you want to visit Jinjin? Emperor Jiawen stroked his beard and sighed. That's right. Previously, she was arrogant and willful, so I purposely ignored her so that she could change. Now that some time has passed, I think she knows her mistake. Besides, I really miss her, so I'm here to visit her with you. Emperor Jiawen had his own considerations. Rong Jin did make a huge mistake, but he received the corresponding punishment. Besides, he was the one who didn't live up to expectations, and the Empress and the rest were implicated. He just wanted them to be more wary of Rong Jin, but he didn't plan on making Rong Jin unable to recover. As for Rong Zhen, she was his favorite daughter in the past, so he couldn't bear to let her go. Hence, after these few days, he took the initiative to ask the Empress to visit Rong Zhen. The Empress hesitated. Your Majesty, Rong Zhen hasn't been in a good mood recently, and she's been locking herself in her room. I'm worried that she might do something to offend you if you go. Why don't you wait for her to calm down before visiting her? Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. Locking herself up and refusing to see anyone. What's wrong with her again? Who provoked her again? The Empress smiled apologetically. This. You actually know that it's because of Vice Admiral Mu. Previously, she had been hoping to get Vice Admiral Mu to help heal her broken pearl of essence, but you know what happened after that. She's very upset because of this. Emperor Jiawen's expression softened. No wonder. He originally wanted to speak up for Rong Zhen, but Mu Qinghe wasn't someone who was easy to talk to. Besides, Rong Zhen had offended him and made him impatient. Hence, it was even more impossible for him to help. Given the current situation, Rong Zhen could only blame herself for being unlucky. I heard that Chu Luyue pleaded for Princess Yongping and got Vice Admiral Mu to invite a celestial physician from the Tianling dynasty to treat Princess Consort Ping Jiang. The Empress lowered her eyes, looking sad. This concubine is truly envious. It's a pity that Jinjin and Chu Luyue had some conflicts back then. Otherwise, I really want to ask her for help. Perhaps Jinjin can. As she spoke, she wiped her tears with a handkerchief, as if she was very sad and regretful. However, she kept glancing at Emperor Jiawen from the corner of her eye. What disappointed her was that Emperor Jiawen didn't look angry at all. She felt a little depressed. As a princess, Rong Zhen was treated worse than Chu Luyue and Mu Hongyu. Why was His Majesty not angry at all? However, she didn't know that Emperor Jiawen had been to the Tianling dynasty before and knew how powerful it was. He clearly knew that he and the entire country Yaoqin were nothing but ants in Mu Qinghe's eyes. What Mu Qinghe wanted to do and who he wanted to help was his own business. Who was he to say anything? Emperor Jiawen pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. You can't be blamed for this. In the unseen world, everything had its own destiny. However, she can't go on like this. Forget it. I'll go and take a look myself." The Empress was shocked, and she couldn't be bothered to wipe her tears. Your Majesty. I think it's better to let Jinjin calm down for a while, right? You know her personality. The more you force her, the more disobedient she becomes. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows and stared at the Empress. Empress, you seem to not want me to see Jinjin. This is weird. In the past, the Empress would always think of ways to invite him over. Of course, he knew that the Empress wanted to show his love for Rongjin, so he would turn a blind eye most of the time. However, today was really weird. No. I'm just. The Empress retorted without thinking, but she didn't know how to continue. Emperor Jiawen was even more confused. His expression became stern. Since you're not willing to go, I'll go myself. After saying that, he lifted his foot and walked outside. The Empress was completely flustered. If I don't stop His Majesty, the consequences will be unimaginable. She followed him without thinking. At the same time, she kept thinking of reasons in her mind. However, Emperor Jiawen seemed determined to go. Just as she was in a terrible fix, a person rushed over from the opposite direction. Your Majesty. Urgent report. Emperor Jiawen finally stopped and asked with knitted brows, what urgent report? Why is it so urgent? The person presented a wooden box with both hands. Your Majesty, you'll know when you read it yourself. Emperor Jiawen glanced at the wooden box, and his expression turned serious. This is the box that country Xing Luo's emperor used to communicate with him secretly, so it must contain the other party's secret letter. Why is there news at this time? The Empress took a look and recognized what it was. She was elated. This is indeed an urgent report, and His Majesty will definitely deal with this first. No matter how urgent Rongjin's matter is, it can't be more important than the country's matters. As expected, Emperor Jiawen held the wooden box in his hands and glanced at the Empress. We'll end it here today. I'll go and see Rongjin after I settle this. The Empress couldn't ask for more. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'll personally visit Jinjin later and patiently counsel her. Emperor Jiawen felt that something was amiss, but he couldn't care less now. Return to the imperial study. Eunuch Min flicked his horsetail whisk. Set up the imperial study. The group of people left in a grandiose manner. The Empress only heaved a sigh of relief when their figures disappeared in front of her. However, she knew that she had to find Rongjin as soon as possible. His Majesty already has suspicions, and he will definitely continue. If he finds out that Rongjin is missing, the Empress didn't dare to imagine it. She stood rooted to the ground for a while before deciding to act until the end. Let's go to the fourth princess. On the other end, Emperor Jiawen returned to the imperial study. After confirming that the surroundings were heavily guarded, he finally opened the wooden box. There was a snow-white letter inside, and there weren't any words on it. However, he didn't look shocked. Instead, he habitually opened it and picked up the brush at the side. He dipped the brush into the ink slab and drew a line on the paper. Then, he drew a second line, a third line. Until the end, he used ink to cover the entire paper. At first glance, there was only a black blob of ink on the paper. But very quickly, white words started to appear under the blob of ink. After about a quarter of an hour, the contents of the scroll were finally revealed. Emperor Jiawen read it, and shock flashed across his eyes. Then, as if he wasn't sure, he moved closer and seriously checked every word again. He stared at the paper and kept quiet for a long time until the words on it completely disappeared. Summon the Crown Prince. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 350. In the blink of an eye, Chu Luiyue had already stayed in Tai Yen Academy for 5 days. Apart from her normal work and rest, she spent most of her energy in the library. When the morning of the 6th day arrived, Chu Luyue put down the book in her hand and let out a long sigh. There's still nothing. In the past few days, she had read all the books on the 2nd floor, but she still didn't find anything related to Jingxin finger. This was within her expectations, but she was still a little disappointed. She looked up. The 3rd floor was about Xian formations, and the 4th floor was about medicine. Although she didn't really need these books, she could go up and take a look. Thinking of this, she finally went up. When Qing Han came to the library again, he saw 2 stacks of books beside each of the 2 guards. Without asking, he knew that those were the records of the books Chu Luyue had read. Qing Han's eyelids twitched. On the first day, he knew that Chu Luyue was a ruthless person, but he still underestimated how perverted she was. Ding! You're here. The 2 of them had been working hard for a few days and had become much more haggard, but when they saw Qing Han, they forced themselves to be alert. How many books did she read? Qing Han controlled his expression and asked. He had been busy dealing with Yang Jianqing and Heng Jingshua these few days, so he didn't have time to come here. He didn't want to open those books at all. The 2 of them looked at each other and felt a little guilty. Just say it. Dean, she has finished reading all the books on the 2nd floor these few days. One of them braced himself and said. Qing Han's vision turned black, and his heart seemed to be numb. Then, what about the Earth-grade martial skills? She didn't open any new Earth-grade martial skills. She only read the first one. The darkness in front of Qing Han's eyes gradually faded. He swallowed hard. That's good, that's good. That's the most important thing. As long as she didn't continue, everything could still be salvaged. She's on the 3rd floor now. Yes. Master. Qing Han was about to say something when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. He turned around in surprise. Xingchen, why are you here? Situ Xingchen smiled. Your disciple has come today to ask for a temporary leave of absence and return to the palace. Qing Han asked curiously, why do you want to go back all of a sudden? Situ Xingchen usually spent most of her time in the academy and would only return to the palace when she had something to do. Situ Xingchen lightly nodded. Elder Zhongyi is here today. Elder Zhongyi. So fast. Qing Han was somewhat surprised. Yes. Tonight, Imperial Father plans to hold a welcoming banquet for Elder Zhongyi, so this disciple also has to make a trip back. Qing Han knew about this matter. Elder Zhongyi was actually country Xing Luo's empress, Zhong Yushi's brother. He was also Situ Xingchen's uncle. He was an elder of Mingyue Tianshan and had a high status. This was also the reason why Situ Xingchen was sent there when she was young. Mingyue Tianshan was very far from here, and the people there rarely went down the mountain. Hence, it was rare for Elder Zhongyi to come out this time. The reason why he did this was because of Situ Ziyue. Previously, during the Qingjiao competition, he lost terribly to Chu Luyue and suffered a huge setback, both physically and mentally. He could not recover from the setback, and his body did not seem to be getting better. Zhong Yushi's heart ached for him, so she invited Elder Zhongyi over. On the one hand, she wanted to see if there were any problems with his body. On the other hand, she wanted to see if she could counsel him. Of course, she also missed her brother, whom she had not seen for many years. Now that Elder Zhongyi was here, they naturally had to treat him with respect. It's my duty. When you see Elder Zhongyi, send my regards to him, said Qing Han. Situ Xingchen smiled and agreed. Then, her gaze silently swept past the booklets beside the 2 of them, and a hint of obscurity flashed across her eyes. Are the books recorded in these booklets, the ones Chu Luyue read? Digression, there's not enough time. Let's update first. I'll continue to add a part later. Chapter 351. That wave was very small and disappeared very quickly. However, Chu Luiyue was sure that it really existed. She stood in place and waited for a while. Sure enough, that wave came again. But this time, the movement caused by the fluctuations was even smaller. If Chu Luiyue had not observed it carefully, she would not have noticed it. She took a few steps forward and stood in the center of the fourth floor. Then, she looked up. The entire fifth floor had a mysterious aura, as if it was isolated from the rest of the world. After a while, Chu Luiyue sensed the third wave. However, this time, it was weaker than the previous one. It was as if the wave was gradually decreasing. Chu Luiyue waited for a while more, but she did not sense any more movements. She looked around. The commotion from the fifth floor did not seem to affect the fourth floor. Everything that happened just now seemed to be her imagination. However, she knew that was not the case. Chu Luiyue recalled Elder Mo Tsang's words. Only the president of Tai Yen Academy could enter the fifth floor. Her rationality told her that she should ignore the commotion on the fifth floor and not provoke unknown trouble. However, deep in her heart, there was a faint impulse that made her unable to leave. Chu Luiyue held her breath and finally walked up the stairs. Just as she was about to step on the stairs, a silver light flashed in front of her eyes. She immediately stopped and looked up. She saw a huge silver Xian formation floating above her head. Countless rays of light intertwined with each other. The Xian formation was like a magnificent matrix that sealed the entire fifth floor. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel a powerful deterrent aura coming from it. She stared at the Xian formation and frowned. It was not impossible for her to break the Xian formation, but it was impossible with her current strength. Moreover, she was more worried that she would attract the attention of others once she started to break the Xian formation. The library was very important to Tai Yen Academy, and the fifth floor was obviously the most important one. Qing Han hated her to the core, so he would definitely watch over her strictly and wait for her weakness. Chu Luiyue took a step back, and the Xian formation dimmed significantly. She gritted her teeth, unwilling to give up. Do you want to go up? A hoarse voice suddenly came from his dantian. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Legendary three-eyed eagle. Do you have a way to help me get in? It seems like you don't know much about my race's abilities. The tone of the legendary three-eyed eagle was as arrogant as ever. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. She had actually forgotten that as divine beasts, the three-eyed eagle clan did indeed have a special ability, space freezing. The so-called space freeze referred to the ability to completely control the space within a certain range. Within that space, the legendary three-eyed eagle possessed absolute authority and supreme power. You mean, to freeze the fifth floor? Chu Luiyue's eyes widened as she asked. Not bad. Since I am in your body and under your control, as long as you enter my divine domain, you will be able to control everything that I can control. So it was called the divine domain. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She had to admit that the suggestion of the legendary three-eyed eagle was very tempting. On one hand, the legendary three-eyed eagle could use the divine domain to avoid attracting the attention of outsiders. On the other hand, she would have an additional layer of assurance to enter the fifth floor. Now, no one knew what would happen after going up. With the help of the legendary three-eyed eagle, it would definitely be much better. After all, it was a divine beast. Naturally, it was extraordinary. What are your conditions? Chu Luiyue asked straightforwardly. The legendary three-eyed eagle took the initiative to help. Of course, it was not out of kindness. I will help you this time and you will let me go. Impossible. Chu Luiyue rejected directly. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice contained a trace of anger. The heavenly square cauldron is already yours. Continuing to trap me inside will not benefit you at all. I will help you this time and you will let me go. Isn't this just right? Who said it won't benefit me? Chu Luiyue interrupted the legendary three-eyed eagle with a smile. Look, now that you can help me go in, isn't that a benefit? You! Cunning! The legendary three-eyed eagle shouted angrily. Chu Luiyue shrugged and did not care at all. It's not the first day you know me. It's impossible to let you go, but we can discuss other things. Other than that, there's nothing else to discuss. Don't be anxious. I haven't said it yet. If I say it, you might be interested. Chu Luiyue crossed his arms and touched his chin. How about? I think of a way to help you recover your physical body. The legendary three-eyed eagle seemed to be shocked. After a while, it sneered. You? Just me. Chu Luiyue did not care about the contempt and sarcasm in its words. For an ordinary magical beast, the shattering of the core of essence means that it is completely dead. But as long as the soul of a divine beast is not destroyed, it is not really dead. Although your physical body has been destroyed, your soul is perfectly preserved in the heavenly square cauldron. The reason why you are so eager to leave is actually because of this, right? The legendary three-eyed eagle did not answer. Of course, I can't do it now, but it doesn't mean that I can't do it in the future. You are a divine beast, so you naturally know how to rebuild your physical body and let yourself be truly resurrected. As long as you tell me, I can naturally help you. After a while, the legendary three-eyed eagle said. How do I know if you are telling the truth? Chapter 352. Chu Luiyue took a step forward almost uncontrollably. When her body entered the frozen space, a cold feeling suddenly swept over her. The entire space was like a flowing liquid. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that when she moved in this space, the resistance she felt was as if she was walking in a quietly flowing stream. She held her breath and couldn't help but look up curiously. That black feather floated quietly in the center, as if it couldn't be moved no matter how hard she tried. Chu Luiyue knew that that was the key to the legendary three-eyed eagle's divine realm. Everything in this space was controlled by that black feather. Chu Luiyue was secretly amazed by the magic of the divine realm. It was rumored that when a cultivator broke through to the 9th rank, they could step into a higher level and also have the power to use the divine realm. Unfortunately, this was just a rumor to her. The ancestor of the Tianling dynasty had once reached the 9th rank, but he left not long after breaking through the shackles and never returned. In the history books of the royal family, there was no content after that. Everything only left the world with countless questions. Chu Luiyue was the second person to have the Tianjing Yuan meridian after that ancestor in the entire Tianling dynasty. Everyone secretly hoped that she could reach the same realm as that ancestor, and even she herself was constantly working hard to cultivate. Unfortunately, she was betrayed and forced to die in the royal family's ancestral hall. She never had the chance again. She sighed softly in her heart, put away her memories, and walked up. After walking through the 9 steps, she arrived in front of the Xian formation. She stretched out her hand and touched the starlight on the Xian formation. However, at this time, in the legendary three-eyed eagle's divine realm, everything was under its control. Even the power of the Xian formation was almost completely frozen and couldn't be used. She continued to walk up, and her entire body silently passed through the Xian formation. When she turned around, she saw that the Xian formation had returned to its previous state, without any trace of being touched. It had to be said that the legendary three-eyed eagle was really something, Chu Luiyue thought, and finally stepped onto the 5th floor. A somewhat familiar fluctuation came from the front. She looked up. Country of Xing Luo Imperial Palace. Situ Ziyue's sleeping quarters. Elder Zhongyi was taking his pulse while Situ Xingchen stood by the side and waited quietly. After a long while, Elder Zhongyi finally loosened his grip and smiled. All right, your internal injuries are basically healed. They won't affect your cultivation in the future. Only then did City Zu's tense expression relax a little. It's all thanks to you. If it wasn't for your help these past few days, I'm afraid that my body would have. Hey, you can't say that. I remember that Xing Chen's master, Qing Han, is also a 5th grade celestial physician. Even if I don't come, he will definitely be able to treat you. Elder Zhongyi smiled and waved his hand. City Zu sighed and said, to be honest, Elder Zhongyi, it's not that I don't trust Dean Qing Han, but I trust you more. Sure enough, this flattery made Elder Zhongyi's expression become slightly better. At the side, City Xingchen had a faint smile on her lips as if she didn't care about City Zu's belittling of her mentor. She had been at Minghua Tianshan for many years, so she naturally understood Elder Zhongyi's character. He had entered Minghua Tianshan to cultivate a few years ago and rose to become an elder. He had a respectable status and didn't think highly of people like Qing Han. Haha. Ziyue, I know your intentions, but Xing Chen is still here. Qing Han is her mentor after all. Aren't you afraid of hurting her by saying this? Said Elder Zhongyi with a chuckle. Actually, brother is right. In Xing Chen's eyes, mentor Qing Han can't be compared to you. City Xingchen smiled gently, and her beautiful face was filled with sincerity. Elder Zhongyi took out a folding fan and lightly knocked on City Xingchen's forehead. I haven't seen you in a few years, but you're even better at sweet-talking people. City Xingchen smiled. You're joking again. She glanced outside and said, it's already late. Elder Zhongyi, why don't you let brother have a good rest first? I'll accompany you back. Elder Zhongyi looked at her thoughtfully, then laughed out loud, that's right. Okay. Then, let's leave first and let Ziyue recover. City Ziyue originally wanted to send them off personally, but the duo rejected him. Hence, he could only lie back down on the bed. On the other end, City Xingchen accompanied Elder Zhongyi and left. After walking for a distance, Elder Zhongyi then asked, Xingchen, why are you here? Xingchen, do you have something on your mind? A helpless and bitter smile surfaced on City Xingchen's face. It's been so many years. Indeed, I can't hide my thoughts from you. Elder Zhongyi placed his hands behind his back, and his voice was much lower and gentler. You grew up by my side, and I've always treated you as my biological daughter. These few days, you've been busy helping Ziyue. I can tell that you have something on your mind and that you're not very happy. If you don't mind, you can tell me. City Xingchen kept quiet for a while before softly asking, Elder Zhongyi, do you know that? Elder Zhongyi, do you know that? Brother Rongxiu is engaged to someone. What? Elder Zhongyi suddenly stood still and looked at City Xingchen in shock. When did this happen? To who? Just 10 days ago. The girl he's engaged to is Chu Luyue. Elder Zhongyi was confused. Who is that? He stayed in Minghua Tianshan all year round, so he didn't know much about the outside world. This time, he came all the way here after leaving the mountain. He had been busy taking care of City Ziyue's health for the past few days, so he didn't know about the Qing Jiao competition and the rest. City Xingchen briefly introduced Chu Luyue and roughly explained what had happened recently. Elder Zhongyi didn't recover his senses for a long time. You're saying that he took the initiative to propose to that girl? How can that be? He's cold by nature, and he hasn't interacted much with other girls for so many years in Minghua Tianshan. Why did he? Elder Zhongyi looked at City Xingchen with heartache. No wonder these past few days you. He had long sensed that City Xingchen liked Rongxiu. Now that he saw her sad expression, he thought that it was indeed so. City Xingchen forced a smile and said, You don't have to worry about me, I'm fine. I thought that I could wait for him all these years, but I didn't expect. I can only say that we're not fated. Seeing her like this, Elder Zhongyi thought for a while and said, "Why don't you ask me to teach him? Why don't I ask his master and see if I can cancel this engagement?" Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat, but she shook her head. "You can't force anything to be sweet. Why should I be the bad guy? Besides, Country Yao Chen's crown prince, Rong Jin, is coming tomorrow." Elder Zhongyi was confused. Why is he here all of a sudden? Situ Xingqian looked down. Marriage alliance. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 353. Marriage alliance. With whom? Elder Zhongyi was dazed, but he suddenly understood when he saw Situ Xingqian's expression. With you. Situ Xingqian nodded lightly. Father has the same intention. Elder Zhongyi was shocked. Country Yao Qin and Country Xing Luo didn't have much interaction before, so why are they suddenly marrying each other? They even have designs on Situ Xingqian. What exactly is your father thinking? Rong Jin isn't outstanding in any way, and from what you said just now, he's narrow-minded and won't amount to anything. He's not worthy of you at all. Even if it's not Rong Xiu, it should be another young talent. How can it be Rong Jin? Situ Xingqian didn't seem to care as she smiled. He's Country Yao Chen's crown prince after all, and he's not completely useless to be able to come this far. You might have underestimated him. Besides, even though this matter hasn't happened yet, Father is very insistent, so he must have his reasons. What do you think? Anyway, I don't think this marriage alliance will work. Elder Zhongyi sneered. If it really happens, won't you have to stay in Country Yao Qin in the future? Since Rong Jin has done so many ridiculous things, it means that he can't take on big responsibilities. Even though he's still the crown prince, he can't stay in this position for long. Xingqian, don't worry. When that kid comes tomorrow, I'll definitely stop this marriage. With me around, your father won't dare to force you. Situ Xingqian's eyes sparkled. Elder Zhongyi, I know that you're doing this for my own good. But I've said so much to you today because I hope that you'll agree to this marriage tomorrow. What? You really want to marry Rong Jin? Elder Zhongyi looked at Situ Xingqian in disbelief. Why, you can't purposely marry Rong Xiu because he wants to marry someone else, right? Situ Xingqian chuckled. You're thinking too much. Why would I do such a thing? I really agree to this marriage. You also know that not many people know about this before. If I suddenly say it out loud, many people will definitely object to it. But if you can express your agreement tomorrow, then the others won't say anything. Elder Zhongyi had an extremely high status in Country Xing Luo. As long as he spoke, this matter would definitely go smoothly. Xingqian, have you really thought this through? Yes. Elder Zhongyi looked at Situ Xingqian's determined expression and couldn't help but sigh. All right. Since that's the case, I'll agree to it. Situ Xingqian's smile deepened. Many thanks, Elder Zhongyi. Country Yao Qin, Imperial Palace. It was already late at night, but the Empress and Rong Jin were still discussing something in the room. You're going to Xing Luo tomorrow. This marriage must succeed. The Empress looked very serious. This is your best chance. If you miss it, who knows how long you'll have to wait. Rong Jin nodded. I know. Don't worry, I've already contacted Situ Xingqian. There won't be any problems with this. The Empress relaxed a little and leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile on her face. That's good. I asked you to think of a way to improve your relationship with her. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Rong Jin also laughed and looked rather smug. Everyone says that Situ Xingqian is the brightest pearl in Xing Luo. Ever since she became of marriageable age, countless people have proposed to her, but she didn't agree. I originally thought that she would be hard to get close to, but I didn't expect her to. Perhaps she was interested in you before. The Empress sized Rong Jin up and smiled. To a woman, love is the most unpredictable thing. Everyone said that Situ Xingchen had high standards, but when she met someone like Rong Jin, it was easy for her to fall in love with him. Rong Jin originally didn't have any special feelings for Situ Xingchen, but when such an outstanding beauty liked him in all aspects, his ego was greatly satisfied. It was precisely because of this that his attitude toward this marriage changed drastically. Previously, he was a little unwilling, but now that he thought about how he could see Situ Xingchen tomorrow and settle the marriage, he had an inexplicable sense of anticipation. Anyway, you did a good job in this matter. When you arrive, try to settle this matter as soon as possible. As long as you settle the marriage, your position as the crown prince will be stable. The Empress sighed. This way, even if your father finds out about Jin Zhen, we'll have a trump card. Rongjin asked worriedly, haven't you found her? Haven't you found her? There's no news at all. It's as if she completely disappeared from the face of the earth. If it weren't for the lack of movement in the palace, she would have thought that Rongjin was dead. However, she clearly wasn't. Someone secretly hid Rongjin somewhere, and they couldn't find her after searching for so long. The Empress didn't know how she spent the past few days in fear. The last time, Emperor Jiawen mentioned that he wanted to visit Rongjin, but he suddenly received a letter from Xing Luo, so he was delayed. Later on, she guessed that the contents of the letter were related to the marriage alliance. This was because Emperor Jiawen removed Rongjin's house arrest not long after, and his attitude toward Rongjin improved significantly. You're leaving tomorrow. Because of this, your father even specially asked Jin Zhen to send you off, but I stopped him. Your father is busy with you and Situ Xingchen, so he can't care about Jin Zhen for now. However, he already has suspicions, and this matter can't be hidden for long. As long as you can settle the marriage alliance as soon as possible, your father will weigh the pros and cons and definitely won't do anything to us. Rongjin nodded. I understand. Princely Mansion. Rongxiu sat in the study room and was writing something. Yan Qing and Umo waited at the side. The octagonal glazed lamp's light shone on Rongxiu's jade-like face. He looked down, and his long eyelashes cast a faint shadow under his eyes. It was like a wisp of smoke floating across the bright moonlight, cold and noble. After some time, he finally stopped writing. Yan Qing and Umo were both energized as they looked up. Rongxiu picked up the thing he wrote and read it again before placing it on a clear, square jade stone in front of him. The moment the two came into contact, the square jade stone suddenly emitted a faint phosphorescent light. It turned out that the square jade stone was sunken in, and there was an extremely shallow pool of water inside. That thing melted when it touched the water, and it turned into rays of light on the water surface. After a while, the light disappeared, and the water surface returned to normal. It also gradually seeped into the jade stone and disappeared. At first glance, it seemed to be an extremely normal jade stone, and there was nothing special about it. Rongxiu pushed that thing forward and lightly said, "Send it back." "Send this back." Yan Qing stepped forward and carefully picked that thing up. But at this point, he saw a golden light suddenly appear on Rongxiu's long and white fingertips. He said in shock, "Master, you're in charge." Master, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 354. Rongxiu glanced at his fingertips, his gaze cold. In the next moment, that cluster of golden light instantly dissipated. The entire process was extremely fast. If not for Yan Qing and Umo standing nearby, they would have thought that what they saw just now was just an illusion. Rongxiu leaned back in his chair, one hand supporting his forehead. There was a faint trace of fatigue between his eyebrows. You may leave. After the initial shock, Yan Qing's expression became very serious. Master, in your current state, I'm afraid that you have to make a trip back as soon as possible. He had only left for a few days to retrieve this item, but his master had already developed to this point. Thinking about it carefully, ever since he started interacting with Chu Luiyue, his master had never returned. Rong Xiu closed his eyes and didn't say anything, but his meaning was very clear. Master, Yan Qing wanted to persuade him again, but Umo couldn't help but cough, desperately signaling to Yan Qing with his eyes. Yan Qing looked back. Seeing him like this, he hesitated for a moment before respectfully retreating. Master, don't worry. I'll do it right away. With that, he left with the strange jade. Umo hurriedly said, It's already very late. Master, you should rest. I'll also take my leave first. Rong Xiu waved his hand. Umo hurriedly followed Yan Qing out. As soon as Umo walked out, he saw Yan Qing waiting for him outside. The two of them exchanged glances and didn't say anything. They just left together. The two of them walked side by side for quite a distance. When they were far away from Rong Xiu's study, Yan Qing finally spoke with a cold face. Today's situation is definitely not the first time. Did you know about it before? Umo could only nod with a bitter face. A similar situation happened a few days ago. Then why didn't you persuade him? Don't you know how serious this matter is? If I didn't see it today, when would you have told me? Yan Qing was usually very calm and indifferent. She rarely had any mood swings, let alone get angry. His reaction at this moment showed how big of an impact this matter had on him. Umo shivered unconsciously, feeling inexplicably guilty. I did try to persuade him. But look at Master, do you think I can persuade him? Yan Qing's face was still cold. Then you should have told me earlier. What's the use of telling you? Umo fiercely rubbed his face. Do you think that Master will listen to what you say? Yan Qing fell silent. They had followed Master for many years and understood Master's character the best. Since he refused to go back now, it was useless for anyone to say anything. It seems that the forceful summoning by Master had a huge impact. Yan Qing murmured. If it wasn't for that incident, Master would have been able to hold on for a long time. But now, didn't Master ask you to retrieve this item because he's determined not to go back for a while? Umo patted his shoulder. Don't worry too much. Master knows what he's doing. Yan Qing kept quiet for a while before asking, did Master say when he's planning to go back? Umo looked troubled. It seems like he's planning to wait until Mu Qinghe leaves. I don't know what's wrong with this Mu Qinghe recently. He's been staying in the imperial city, doing nothing, and refusing to leave. No one knew what else he wanted to do, but no one dared to ask. Even Emperor Jiawen didn't dare to disturb him for no reason, let alone others. I think you should send this item back first. Don't delay the important matters. If anything happens to Master, I'm here. Don't worry. I'll inform you immediately if anything happens. Yan Qing finally gave up after Umo repeatedly assured him and left with the jade. Umo looked at his departing back view, and a tinge of guilt appeared in his eyes. If Yan Qing knew that Master's situation was worse than what he saw today, how would he feel? Now, I can only hope that Mu Qinghe leaves as soon as possible. And that person. Hurry back. In the library. Chu Luiyue looked at the empty fifth floor in front of her and knitted her brows. There's actually nothing here. Not to mention books, there's not even a bookshelf here. At a glance, the four white walls were empty. Chu Luiyue found it increasingly strange. That's not right. In any academy, there was no way that a place like the library pavilion would leave an entire floor devoid of content. She didn't give up as she walked forward and started to carefully check everything here. But no matter how hard she searched, she didn't find anything. She even knocked on the four walls, but it was still the same. After searching one round, she finally stopped. She held her chin with one hand and fell into deep thought. Previously, when she was preparing to leave on the fourth floor, she did feel 3 waves. Although each of the 3 waves was smaller than the previous one, there was no doubt that they were there. Then where did they come from? Chu Luiyue originally thought that even if there weren't as many books here as there were on the other floors, there should be something special. But she didn't expect that there was nothing here. Or perhaps, she just hadn't found it yet. Chu Luiyue thought for a long time, but still couldn't find an answer. She simply sat on the ground and crossed her legs. Anyway, there was still one day left. She could wait here and see if the waves would appear again. Time slowly passed. But Chu Luiyue didn't see any signs of movement. Bored to death, she decided to silently recite the Jingxin finger again. Because when she came in, both parties had already agreed that she could borrow any book in the library, but every book had to be returned to its original position after reading it. Moreover, the books on each floor were not allowed to be taken to other floors. Therefore, Chu Luiyue could only rely on her own memory to recite the Jingxin finger. She held her breath and focused. In her mind, the Jingxin finger appeared clearly. Chu Luiyue started to recall the first move and tried to cultivate it. The force in her body surged towards her dantian. When it condensed into a ball, she controlled a strand of force and poured it into her right index finger. But before that strand of force reached her right index finger, it had already dissipated into the Yuan meridian. Chu Luiyue readjusted, mobilized an even smaller amount of force, and tried again. It was still a failure. But Chu Luiyue wasn't discouraged. She continued to try again and again. The first step now was to control the force so that it could flow along the Yuan meridian from her dantian all the way to her right index finger. Just this point alone was very difficult. Because this required the cultivator to have a sufficiently strong Yuan meridian, it also required the cultivator to have exquisite control over the force. Chu Luiyue only wanted to try it first, but the more she tried, the more she realized that it was more difficult than she had imagined. Her competitive spirit was aroused. She actually tried it over 1,000 times. When the sun shone on the next morning, Chu Luiyue's right index finger was finally covered in a layer of faint silver. Before she could exclaim in surprise, she suddenly felt that her surroundings were bright. She subconsciously squinted her eyes and looked around. Then, her eyes suddenly widened. Countless silver characters appeared on the walls around her. They were shining brightly. Digression, I'm sorry, I can't stand it anymore. Tomorrow, I'll land at 6. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 355. Chu Luiyue looked at the scene in front of her in shock. The 5th floor was indeed not empty. To think that such a shocking secret was hidden in all directions. Chu Luiyue subconsciously wanted to walk forward. Suddenly, countless rays of light flew from all directions and gradually condensed in front of her. In a moment, 3 large silver words appeared in the air in front of her, Awakening God Technique. The 3 words were like flowing water, swaying gently and shining brilliantly, but with an unparalleled pressure. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This aura was very similar to Awakening God Finger, but it was several times stronger than Awakening God Finger. And this pressure was even more vast and boundless. Chu Luiyue's heart was beating wildly, as if it was being pulled by some mysterious force. She slowly stretched out her finger and gently tapped on the 3 large words. It was like a stone being thrown into a calm lake. The void in front of her suddenly rippled, with the 3 words as the center, spreading out in all directions. The ripples spread to the surrounding walls. Buzz! The subtle ripples came again. Chu Luiyue looked over. The words that appeared on the surrounding walls seemed to be affected as well. Like the stars in the dark night, they flickered and disappeared. Her heart suddenly trembled. This ripple was exactly the same as the one she felt on the 4th floor. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt an inexplicable feeling coming from her fingertips, all the way to the bottom of her heart. In an instant, she seemed to have an indescribable sense of connection with the entire space. She seemed to have sensed something, looked up to the left, and carefully identified the words on the wall. Soon, she realized that the content on the wall was exactly the same as the awakening God finger she saw earlier. She immediately looked at the second wall beside her. Sure enough, the content on the wall was the same as the awakening God finger. But as she looked at it, Chu Luiyue realized that something was not right. The thing on the second wall had actually transformed the awakening God finger into a palm technique. And its power had also become stronger. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes and looked at it seriously again. He could basically confirm that the level of this palm technique was at the middle stage of the earth stage. An absurd and bold idea suddenly appeared in Chu Luiyue's mind. She couldn't wait to look at the third wall. At this point, he changed from a palm technique to a fist technique. More importantly, once this fist art was mastered, it was very likely that it would reach the upper level of the earth rank. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress his wildly beating heart as he looked at the last wall. Just like the 3 walls in front of him, there was also some glowing writing on it. However, after staring at it for a while, Chu Luiyue realized that he couldn't understand what it was. None of the words could be read smoothly, and it looked very chaotic. Chu Luiyue looked at it for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. However, this only made her even more excited. It was rumored that heaven rank martial skills were different from ordinary martial skills that were recorded with pen and ink. The heaven rank martial skills in this world were all obtained by powerful people who comprehended the heavenly Tao. If one wanted to cultivate a heaven rank martial skill, they couldn't use their eyes to see it. Instead, they had to use their force to sense it. If a cultivator's realm wasn't enough, they wouldn't be able to touch it or even understand it. Just like this moment. Chu Luiyue had seen a heaven rank martial skill once in her previous life, and it was on the day of her coming-of-age ceremony. It was left behind by the ancestors of the Tianling dynasty and had always been treasured by the royal family. Originally, after she ascended the throne, she could officially start trying to cultivate the heaven rank martial skill, but she couldn't wait until that day. However, even though it had been a long time, she still clearly remembered the scene when she saw the heaven rank martial skill. She remembered everything that had happened back then clearly. She could confirm that the content on the last wall was indeed a heaven rank martial skill. Chu Luiyue's hands clenched into fists. The blood in her body seemed to be boiling, making her entire body seem to be burning. In fact, when she saw the content on the second wall, she guessed that the level of these things might be gradually increasing. The result was indeed so. There was even a heaven rank martial skill. After the shock, Chu Luiyue calmed down and started to think. No wonder Elder Emotsang said that only the dean could enter the 5th level. There was such a shocking secret hidden here. Once people knew about it, it would attract countless powerful cultivators to fight for it. At that time, Tai Yen Academy would definitely not be able to hold on. Even the entire country Xing Luo would be in trouble. However, Chu Luiyue couldn't figure out why such a shocking existence would appear in this small country Xing Luo's Tai Yen Academy. She even suspected that the dean of Tai Yen Academy didn't know what this thing was. If Ching Han knew, why didn't he choose to cultivate it? Even if he didn't understand the heaven rank martial skill now, the finger technique, fist technique, and palm technique in front of it were extremely powerful. If he didn't know, you owe me again. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment before she reacted. That's right. The heaven rank martial skills pressure was extremely strong. If it wasn't in the legendary three-eyed eagle's god territory, it would have caused a huge commotion. From this point of view, the legendary three-eyed eagle had indeed helped her a lot. Okay, I'll remember it for now. Chu Luiyue didn't mind and admitted it straightforwardly. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before it said coldly, "You're quite lucky." Chu Luiyue's lips curled up. Of course. How could it be just not bad? It was simply heaven-defying. This was a heaven-rank martial skill. Some people might not even see it in their entire lives. She had only come to the library to read, and she actually had such a fortuitous opportunity. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but sigh. This trip was really worth it. However, there was a very troublesome problem now. She didn't seem to have a way to take this God-stunning technique away. She had already memorized the God-stunning finger. The God-stunning palm and God-stunning fist were much more complicated, but she could completely memorize them as long as she read more. The most troublesome thing was the thing on the last wall. She realized that she couldn't remember the contents at all. The heaven rank martial skill contained an extremely strong pressure. According to her current realm and strength, she couldn't comprehend it at all. Every time she finished reading it, it was as if there was a hand that forcefully erased those things from her mind. Moreover, after Chu Luiyue tried a few times, she felt a little tired. She knew that this was the result of her forceful actions, so she didn't continue. She turned her gaze back to the three big words in front of her. God-stunning technique, she muttered softly. She had to leave here today. She had to think of a way as soon as possible. She really couldn't give up on the heaven rank martial skill in front of her. She looked at her hand and suddenly had a question. How did she summon this God-stunning technique just now? Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in her dantian. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked. A water droplet appeared on her fingertip. That water droplet quickly changed, and then turned into a piece of transparent incomplete paper. The contents on the last wall were clearly reflected on it. Digression, a wave of action was about to come. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 356. The stars on the transparent remnant page shone brightly, and it actually flickered along with the words on the wall. Then, that thing flew back to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue looked over, and when she saw what was on it, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The content on the transparent remnant page was exactly the same as on the last wall. Every character, even every glimmer, was exactly the same. The size of this transparent remnant page was probably not even 1% of the wall, but when Chu Luiyue looked at it, for some reason, she felt that those characters were reflected on the transparent remnant page, and they were still clearly visible, and even seemed a little small and empty. It was just a transparent remnant page, but Chu Luiyue felt that it seemed to contain a huge space that could accommodate everything. Chu Luiyue stretched out her hand, and the transparent remnant page flew back into her hand. She lowered her eyes and looked at it carefully. She saw that every character was clearly written on it. She opened her mouth, but was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. This transparent remnant page was actually a complete copy of the heaven tier martial skill on the last wall. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Chu Luiyue wouldn't have believed what was happening. A heaven tier martial skill was such a powerful and sacred existence, yet it was so easily copied. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. Everything in front of her had not disappeared. She couldn't help but look at the wall again, but there was no change. In the next moment, her palm turned cold, and the remnant page turned back into a water droplet and returned to her dantian. Then, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that there was something extra in her mind. It was a heaven-tier martial skill. Even though she was still unable to comprehend it, it truly existed in her body. This can be done. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but mutter. She only knew that the water droplet in her dantian contained an extremely vast power, and every time she encountered danger, it could save her life. But who would have thought that it could actually help her copy a heaven-tier martial skill? No, it should be said that a heaven-tier martial skill could actually be copied. That's not a copy. That's the power of the heavenly Tao that it contains forcefully taken away. The three-eyed eagle suddenly opened its mouth. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. What? The three-eyed eagle said slowly, "Take a look again." Chu Luiyue looked at the last wall again. There's nothing changed. Before she could finish her sentence, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that something was amiss. The characters on it didn't change, but the overall feeling was indeed different. It was as if it had lost the indescribable sense of holiness and vastness from before. All that was left was a bunch of messy characters. "Where's Rongjin?" The Empress was very anxious and anxiously explained. "Your Majesty, let me explain, Wah." Emperor Zhaowen suddenly swept the things on the table beside him to the floor and angrily said, "I'm asking you. Where's Rongjin now?" The Empress was so frightened that she shivered. Her legs turned to jelly, and she knelt on the floor as tears streamed down her face. "Your Majesty, I don't know where Rongjin is." Emperor Zhaowen was so angry that his face turned green. Because of country Xing Luo's matters, he didn't have the time to care about Rongjin. After Rongjin left with the others, he then remembered that he hadn't seen Rongjin for quite some time. Thinking that Rongjin didn't come out on such an important day, Emperor Zhaowen felt that she was a little insensible. Hence, he personally went to her bedroom to teach her a lesson. The Empress stopped him a few times, which made him even more suspicious. He directly ordered someone to break open the bedroom door. However, when he came in, he realized that Rongjin wasn't here. He then realized that something was amiss and started to interrogate the Empress. At this point, Eunuch Min suddenly walked in from outside the door and whispered something into Emperor Zhaowen's ear. Emperor Zhaowen was shocked and furious as he harshly kicked the Empress's heart. "Si Hui Jing. You've got guts. How dare you raise a secret guard?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 357. The Empress's heart skipped a beat. The matter was indeed exposed. She was anxious as she endured the pain in her chest and begged, "Your Majesty, I don't have any intentions. Your Majesty, I don't have any other intentions. It's just for stability." After so many years, only Si Meng, you still dare to deny it. Emperor Zhaowen was furious, and there seemed to be a fire burning in his eyes. The Empress was shocked. Emperor Zhaowen had never been so angry at her. She actually knew that this matter had crossed Emperor Zhaowen's bottom line. It didn't matter if there was 1 or 10. The important thing was that Emperor Zhaowen had been kept in the dark about Si Meng's existence. This was equivalent to giving Emperor Zhaowen and the entire palace guards a loud slap. "Speak. Where are that traitor and Rongjin now?" The Empress cried and shook her head. "Your Majesty, I really don't know. Si Meng died a few days ago, but Jinzhen's whereabouts are still unknown." Emperor Zhaowen stared at her with deadly eyes and sneered. "Dead? Isn't this too much of a coincidence?" "It's true. I've been in contact with him, but we suddenly stopped a few days ago. He's indeed dead. Your Majesty, I didn't lie to you." Emperor Zhaowen finally believed the Empress a little when he saw her like this, but the anger in his heart didn't decrease at all. "We'll talk about whether he's dead or alive later. I want to know where Rongjin is now." The Empress cried even more sorrowfully. Your Majesty, I've actually been secretly searching for Rongjin these few days, but I didn't find any clues. I'm very worried, and I've been feeling uneasy these few days. Emperor Zhaoan couldn't hold it in and kicked her again. If you're really uneasy, you should have told me long ago. If I didn't find out myself today, how long were you planning to hide it for? You're already the Empress, and your son is the Crown Prince. What are you still not satisfied with? The Empress knelt on the floor. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were dirty. She looked very disheveled. Eunuch Min stood behind Emperor Zhaoan and was terrified when he saw this scene. He had served His Majesty for so many years, but he had never seen His Majesty hit the Empress. He was clearly furious today. He didn't dare to dissuade him. It was bad enough that the Empress hid Rongjin's disappearance, but she actually kept secret guards. Wasn't this going against His Majesty? Once this matter was exposed, she might not be able to keep her position as the Empress. Men! Take the Empress away. At the same time, summon Siyi to the palace. He wanted to ask Siyi Ji if the Si family was planning to rebel. The Empress raised her head abruptly, her face full of panic. Was His Majesty going to imprison her? How could that be? Once the news got out, she would definitely lose her position as the Empress. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Please take into account that this concubine has served you for so many years and let this concubine off this time. And Rongjin, Rongjin. No matter how you want to punish this concubine will accept it. However, if the country of Xing Luo finds out about this, it will definitely have a huge impact on our marriage. The latter part of the sentence made Emperor Zhaoan's heart waver. Not bad. Now that Rongjin is in country Xing Luo, his marriage with Situ Xingchen can be confirmed if everything goes well. But if this scandal gets out at this time, he stared at the Empress with a heavy gaze, which made her feel weak. Si Huijing, you sure have a good plan. She must have calculated all of this long ago. She purposely made Rongjin her last shield. He clearly knew that she purposely dug a hole for him, but he still had to jump into it. The Empress's pale lips trembled as she averted her gaze. She didn't dare to look at Emperor Zhaoan or speak again. After some time, Emperor Zhaoan coldly said, "Pass on my orders. The Empress has contracted a serious illness and is bedridden. Concubine Gu will be in charge of the harem affairs for now." The Empress's heart sank. His Majesty is going to imprison me and take away all of my rights. Your Majesty, Emperor Zhaoan bent down and harshly pinched the Empress's chin as he said word by word, "I'll send someone to Rongjin. When Rongjin's matter is settled and Rongjin's whereabouts are revealed, I'll deal with you." Then, he flung his wrist, and the Empress fell to the ground. He turned around and left with big strides. Eunuch Min glanced at the Empress and hurriedly followed him. The Empress only heaved a sigh of relief when their figures completely disappeared. She suddenly took out something from her arms. Now, all of her hopes were placed on Rongjin. The matter of the marriage alliance must go smoothly. Country Xing Luo. The palace banquet to welcome Rongjin and the rest was in progress. Many people were toasting Rongjin in the palace, and it was very lively. The reason for this was that country Xing Luo's Emperor Mingjin, Situ Chong, had just agreed to Rongjin's marriage proposal to Situ Xingchen. Both parties were officially in-laws. Situ Chong seemed to be very satisfied with Rongjin, and he even directly set the wedding date to be a month later. This made the crowd very confused. In the past, many aristocratic families had proposed to Situ Xingchen, but neither Situ Xingchen nor Situ Chong agreed. They originally thought that Situ Chong couldn't bear to part with his precious daughter, but they didn't expect him to directly agree once Rongjin came. Of course, everyone knew that this marriage was very important, and it must have been discussed beforehand. Now, it was just a formality. However, the crowd still couldn't figure out why it had to be Rongjin. According to rumors, the crown prince of country Yaochen didn't have a good reputation recently. What surprised everyone was that Elder Zhong Yi, who had just returned from Mingwei Tianshan, actually praised Rong Jin. With him speaking, nobody dared to object. Thus, the matter of the marriage was successfully completed. Rong Jin was really proud of being surrounded by the crowd. Looking at those people's jealous and envious gazes, he felt that he finally had an outlet to vent everything that he had suffered previously. With a face full of smiles, he toasted Situ Xingchen, who was sitting not far away. Situ Xingchen smiled and nodded gently, looking dignified and gentle. Rong Jin was elated. What's mine will eventually belong to me. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he smiled at the surrounding people. I'm a little dizzy. I'll go out to take a breather. The crowd thought that he wanted to avoid the wine, so they laughed and didn't stop him. Rong Jin hurriedly left the palace. Situ Xingchen squinted her eyes, stood up, and walked out of the palace. Rong Jin walked to a secluded corner and took out a bell from his arms. At this point, the bell was vibrating, and the sound was very soft. However, Rong Jin's face turned even uglier. Before he left, he especially left this twin bell behind. If Rong Jin's matter was exposed, Mother would shake it. Did something happen on Mother's side? Your Highness. A gentle voice sounded. Digression, I'm so sleepy. I drank some coffee, and it really refreshed me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 358. Rong Jin immediately hid the twin bell and turned around to look. It was Situ Xingchen. Eldest princess. Why are you here? Rong Jin forced a smile and asked. Situ Xingchen didn't seem to notice his unnatural expression as she smiled gently. I just drank some wine and felt a little dizzy, so I wanted to come out for some fresh air. I didn't expect to meet you coincidentally. Rong Jin nodded perfunctorily as he was still thinking about Rong Jin. Situ Xingchen glanced at him and asked uncertainly, why do you look so serious? You seem to have something on your mind. Rong Jin hid his smile and said, Eldest princess, you're overthinking. Situ Xingchen's lips curved up into a smile, and her face blushed as if she were shy. The crown prince and I are already engaged, yet you still call me that. You're treating me like an outsider. If you don't mind, you can call me by my name. Rong Jin was a little surprised, but his heart skipped a beat when he saw the faint blush on Situ Xingchen's innocent face. Xingchen. Situ Xingchen nodded, and her voice was as gentle as the wind that brushed past Rong Jin's heart. If there's anything bothering you, you can talk to Xingchen about it. It won't be good if you keep it bottled up in your heart. Situ Xingchen's words seemed to have some magical power as Rong Jin couldn't help but let down his guard. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just some small matters. He slightly relaxed. Luckily, he had already settled his engagement with Situ Xingchen. If not, he really didn't know what kind of situation he would face when he returned. Situ Xingchen quietly looked at Rong Jin and acted like a patient listener. Rong Jin had drunk some wine, and he was a little tipsy. When Situ Xingchen looked at him with such a gaze, an impulse surged in his heart, and he couldn't help but blurt out some words. Actually, my younger sister is in some trouble. Situ Xingchen blinked. Fourth princess. Rong Jin nodded with a solemn expression. Fourth princess was fine when she was with Chu Luyue previously. Why is she in trouble now? Asked Situ Xingchen confusedly. However, Rong Jin was shocked. What did you say? You saw Rong Zhen and Chu Luyue together. Situ Xingchen nodded. Yeah. 2 days before I came back. Rong Jin quickly recalled the time and shockingly realized that it was when Rong Zhen went missing. He stepped forward, grabbed Situ Xingchen's shoulders, and anxiously asked, why are you here? Where did you see them? Do you know what they were doing at the time? Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's face as she looked down to hide the deep hatred in her eyes. Your Highness, you're hurting me. Rong Jin hurriedly let go. Sorry, I was a little agitated just now. Is what you said true? Situ Xingqian looked at him in shock as if she did not understand why he had such a huge reaction. That's right. That day, I was planning to return to the inn to pack my things when I saw Chu Luiyue and the fourth princess leaving together. There was an old man following behind them. I was quite far away, so I couldn't see who he was. As for where they went, I'm not sure either. What's wrong? Is this important? Rong Jin's body trembled slightly, and he didn't say anything for a long time. The old man following them is most likely Si Mang. This means that Rong Jin's disappearance really has something to do with Chu Luiyue. Previously, his mother had mentioned it, but he did not think much of it. He only thought that his mother did not like Chu Luiyue, so she purposely dragged her into this. Thinking about it now, perhaps mother was right. Rong Zhen and Chu Luiyue did have a conflict between them. Since Si Mang was also there, it could be confirmed that Rong Zhen requested to leave the palace. It was very likely that she went to look for Chu Luiyue first. According to her personality, she would definitely do such a thing. However, he did not expect that Chu Luiyue would be unharmed, and Rong Zhen would disappear for no reason. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning crazily in his heart. Your Highness. Your Highness. Situ Xingqian called him twice with a worried look on her face. Rong Jin suddenly had an idea. Is Chu Luiyue still at Tai Yen Academy? That's right. Why are you suddenly looking for her? Rong Jin was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, Xingqian, can I ask you for a favor? Situ Xingqian smiled slowly and gently said, Your Highness. Please go ahead. Elder Emotsong quickly arrived at the library. When he saw Chu Luiyue standing there, his heart skipped a beat. He then believed that Chu Luiyue was really planning to leave. When he first heard the news, he was still in disbelief. All the geniuses who won first place in the Qing Jiao competition would make full use of the 1-month time limit. After all, it was a rare opportunity. However, Chu Luiyue only took 10 days. Elder Emotsong was surprised and elated. However, when he saw the stacks of books, his good mood was instantly shrouded in a layer of darkness. Even if Chu Luiyue only stayed here for 10 days, he read more than others could finish in a few months. Now, Elder Emotsong could only hope that Chu Luiyue only opened those books and did not read them in detail. Chu Luiyue, have you really decided to leave? Asked Elder Emotsong solemnly with one hand behind his back. Chu Luiyue smiled. Didn't you wish for this to happen a long time ago? Elder Emotsong snorted. Don't be too smug. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. Chu Luiyue did not take it to heart and smiled. Don't worry, Elder Emotsong. I understand that. Elder Emotsong sized Chu Luiyue up and thought to himself, for some reason, Chu Luiyue seems to be in a good mood today. Thinking about it carefully, anyone who got the chance to borrow so many books for free and even unlocked an Earth Stage Warrior Technique book would be overjoyed. On his way here, he had already confirmed that Chu Luiyue did not find any other Earth Stage Warrior Technique books after that day. This was considered a blessing in disguise. Since you've made up your mind, then I'll bring you to the entrance of the academy. Tai Yen Academy had a strict barrier. If Chu Luiyue wanted to leave, she needed Elder Emotsong's permission. Chu Luiyue nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Emotsong. Elder Emotsong sneered in his heart. He did not fall for it and waved his sleeves. Let's go. Chu Luiyue did not mind Elder Emotsong's attitude and followed after him. The two of them walked towards the entrance of the academy one after another. Along the way, Elder Emotsang's face was cold and he did not say a word. Chu Luiyue was tactful and did not say anything. Anyway, she had already gotten what she wanted the most. These cold faces and sarcastic remarks were nothing to her. Elder Emotsang extended his hand and was about to open the barrier. Chu Luiyue stood at the side and waited quietly. Suddenly, a deep and cold voice sounded. "You're not allowed to leave." Digression. Today, Xiaoxiang seemed to have delayed the mobile phone user's browsing experience again. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 359. Upon hearing this voice, a cold glint flashed across Chu Luiyue's eyes. She then calmed herself down and looked back calmly. The person who spoke was Qing Han. "Director. Why are you here?" Elder Emotsang was shocked. Qing Han had been busy investigating Yang Jianqing and Hing Jingchua, so he hadn't shown up for a few days. He didn't expect to suddenly appear now. "You said that you're not letting her go. Are you referring to Chu Luiyue?" Qing Han strode over with a serious face. "That's right." Elder Emotsang was stunned. For a moment, he was at a loss. Didn't the director want Chu Luiyue to leave as soon as possible? Now that she's finally leaving, why isn't he letting her go? "Director, what are you?" Qing Han stood 3 steps away from Chu Luiyue with a cold expression. "Chu Luiyue, you know why I'm stopping you, right?" Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Did he find out about the God-stunning technique? That shouldn't be the case. Qing Han shouldn't be able to find out about this given his abilities. A polite smile appeared on her calm face. "Director Qing Han, I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't know?" Qing Han sneered. "No one knows better than you what you've done. Rong Jin will be here soon. You should save your excuses for him." Rong Jin. Chu Luiyue secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like it's not because of the God-stunning technique. But, what does this have to do with Rong Jin? She knitted her brows slightly. From Qing Han's point of view, Chu Luiyue's expression clearly showed her guilt and fear after being exposed. Seeing Qing Han's gloating gaze, Chu Luiyue suddenly remembered something. If I remember correctly, Rong Jin should be in country Xing Luo by now to marry Situ Xingqian. Just as she was thinking about this, she heard footsteps behind her. Qing Han looked over, and a long-awaited smile appeared on his face. Chu Luiyue turned around. Who else could it be other than Rong Jin who was walking in from the door? His expression was anxious and his footsteps were hurried. It was obvious that he had rushed over from somewhere. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Rong Jin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Along the way, he had been thinking about how to interrogate Chu Luiyue when he saw her, but now that he saw her in person, his mind suddenly went blank. In his heart, he was actually unwilling to confront Chu Luiyue face to face, but Chu Luiyue saw the struggle that flashed across Rong Jin's eyes, and he narrowed his eyes. Then, she saw Situ Xingqian behind Rong Jin. She was 1 step behind Rong Jin and seemed to have accompanied him here. When she looked up and saw Chu Luiyue, she was also shocked. Obviously, she did not expect to bump into her here. However, she quickly adjusted her expression. She nonchalantly shifted her gaze away and walked to Rong Jin's side. "Your Highness, if you have something to say, we can talk it out. Don't be angry." Chu Luiyue raised her brows high. Since when did Situ Xingqian and Rong Jin become so close? They seem to have only met a few times, right? Rong Jin glanced at Situ Xingqian and nodded. "Don't worry. I know what to do." Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and was in deep thought. "I just entered the library to read for a few days, but many things seem to have happened outside. Director Ching Han, thank you for stopping her for me. Rong Jin cupped his fists and bowed to Ching Han. Ching Han waved his hands. It's just a small matter, it's not worth mentioning. Xingchen told me that I must help you, so I naturally won't reject it. Rong Jin looked at Situ Xingchen gratefully. Thank you. Don't delay His Highness's work, said Situ Xingchen gently. Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. If she hadn't personally seen the cloud pattern on Situ Xingchen's clothes and how she looked when she faced Rong Xiu, she would have really thought that Situ Xingchen had a crush on Rong Jin. Other things aside, her acting skills are really good. Upon hearing this laugh, Rong Jin instinctively felt that Chu Luiyue was mocking him, and his face couldn't help but change. Chu Luiyue, what are you laughing at? Chu Luiyue shrugged his shoulders. Nothing. Your Highness, why are you looking for me? Just tell me. Why do you have to make such a big fuss? Rong Jin paused and asked in a low voice, is it Rong Jin's fault? Is Rong Jin's matter related to you? Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. What? Upon seeing her reaction, Rong Jin's heart wavered. She really doesn't seem to know, however. Situ Xingchen clearly said that she saw Chu Luiyue and Rongjin together. I'm asking you, did you do something to Rongjin previously? A thought flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. I did this very secretly, so logically speaking, nobody should have noticed. However, the Empress might know that it was me. After all, the Empress most likely knows what Rongjin did previously. It seems very normal for her to tell Rong Jin this guess. But, why does Rong Jin look like he's very certain about this matter? Chu Luiyue shook his head. Your Highness, I really don't know what you're asking. Shouldn't the fourth princess be in country Yao Chen's palace now? Why are you finding trouble with me? Rong Jin finally couldn't hold it in as he stepped forward and suppressed his voice. Don't pretend anymore. You must be behind Rongjin's disappearance. Someone saw her with you before she went missing. Chu Luiyue blinked, and his clear eyes were enveloped in a faint layer of confusion. The fourth princess went missing. When did this happen? Upon seeing her expression, Rong Jin suddenly hesitated. Does Chu Luiyue really not know? Chu Luiyue's gaze turned slightly, and he looked at Situ Xingchen with interest. She thought that she knew how Rong Jin found out. Eldest Princess Situ, may I ask, was it you who told His Highness the Crown Prince that you saw me with the fourth princess? Situ Xingchen bit her lips and knitted her brows, looking very pitiful. I did see you. I'm sorry, I didn't know that the fourth princess went missing. I just said it unintentionally when His Highness asked. I didn't do it on purpose. Chu Luiyue's lips slowly curved up. Very good. This one sentence easily turned his suspicions into certainty. Rongjin's disappearance was indeed related to her. However, she didn't remember when she was with Rongjin. Before leaving the imperial city, she didn't even show her face. Situ Xingchen was lying. Chu Luiyue, what else do you have to say now? Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't say anything for a while, Rong Jin thought that she was guilty, so he spoke again. After pausing for a moment, he continued. I know that Rongjin isn't dead yet. As long as you hand her over, I promise that I won't kill you. Chu Luiyue coldly glanced at him. Your Highness, are you going to convict me based on her one-sided words? Digression, there's one more update later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Web. Chapter 360. Of course not. As long as you can produce evidence to prove that you didn't do it, no one will make things difficult for you, said Rong Jin. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly. This means that I have to find a way to prove my innocence to clear my name when others slander me and pour dirty water on me. However, I don't know how to prove something that I didn't do. Rongjin was speechless. Actually, if he wasn't worried about his and his mother's future situation, he wouldn't want to force Chu Luiyue like this. After all, Rongjin's disappearance had already been exposed, and his father definitely knew about Si Meng's existence. According to his understanding of his father, the latter point might be more serious than the former. Now, he could only think of a way to find Rongjin to salvage the situation. Isn't this just your side of the story? I can't believe it completely either. If you're not guilty, follow me back to the imperial city now. Clarify things in front of father and mother personally. As he spoke, he reached out to pull Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue moved her feet lightly and easily avoided his actions. Rongjin was stunned. Chu Luiyue's cultivation level was lower than his, but she was clearly stronger than him now. This made him feel even worse, and he felt an indescribable sense of suffocation. When he was with Situ Xingqian, he didn't feel this way. Thinking of this, he became a little impatient. Why? Are you guilty? Before Chu Luiyue could speak, Qing Han said coldly, "You've already left the library. Anyway, you've already left the library. Isn't it just nice to go back with Rongjin?" Rongjin was secretly shocked. Chu Luiyue actually only stayed here for such a short period of time. But if that's the case, it's even better. The few of them focused their gazes on Chu Luiyue, clearly wanting her to agree to this suggestion. Chu Luiyue's gaze turned cold. She hated it when people forced her to do things, especially when this person was someone she detested. What if I don't agree? Once she said that, the surrounding atmosphere instantly froze. Country Yao Qin, Imperial Study. Rongqi stood outside the door, looking anxious. Eunuch Min, I'll have to trouble you to inform him again. This prince really has something important to report to Imperial Father. Eunuch Min looked troubled. Your Highness King Ping, it's not that I don't want to help you, but there's really no way to help you. His Majesty had lost his temper this time, and he was still angry. If you go in now, not only will you not be able to help the Empress, you will make things more troublesome. Listen to my advice and go back first. When His Majesty is in a better mood, it won't be too late for you to plead for leniency. Rongqi frowned. Eunuch Min, why don't you believe me? This prince really didn't come here to plead for Imperial Mother. She really had something important to tell Imperial Father. If we delay any longer, the consequences will be unimaginable. Eunuch Min still refused to agree and kept persuading him. Now that the Empress was under house arrest, the fourth princess was missing and the crown prince was far away in Xingluo country, only the fifth prince, Rongqi, was left. Under such circumstances, how could he not come here for the Empress and the rest? Seeing that Eunuch Min refused to help no matter what, Rongqi finally panicked and shouted at the study. Imperial Father. I have something important to report. I beg you to let your son in. Eunuch Min was scared out of his wits and hurriedly went forward to stop him. Oh my! Your Highness King Ping. What are you doing? If you disturb His Majesty, what do you think we should do? Please stop shouting. Rongqi refused to listen and shouted even louder. Eunuch Min complained incessantly. This prince usually looked like he was not very capable, but he could cause so much trouble when he caused a ruckus. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and persuade King Ping. Eunuch Min hurriedly urged the palace servants beside him to stop him. It was nothing to offend Rongqi, but if he angered His Majesty at this time, he would be courting death. Rongqi was quickly lifted up by the palace servants and taken away. He was anxious and finally could not help but shout. Imperial Father! Imperial Father! I know where Zhenjin is. Eunuch Min was shocked. The next moment, Emperor Jiawen's voice was heard from the study. Come in. The palace servants hurriedly let go of Rong Qi. Rong Qi tidied up his appearance and harshly glared at the crowd before entering the study. Once he entered, he saw Emperor Jiawen sitting there and looking at him sternly. He couldn't help but tremble, and the arrogance he had before instantly dissipated. Imperial Father, where is Rongzhen? Asked Emperor Jiawen straightforwardly. Rong Qi hurriedly explained. Imperial Father, actually, I'm not sure yet. But, don't be angry. However, I already know who hid Rongzhen. As long as we catch that person, we can definitely find Rongzhen. He stuttered as he spoke, and his forehead was filled with sweat. Fortunately, he had already said what his mother had instructed him to do. Emperor Jiawen leaned forward and enunciated every word clearly. Who is it? Rong Qi pressed his lips against each other and said a name without hesitation. Chu Luiyue. Chu Ning had just finished his work. He closed his eyes and rubbed his glabella. He looked tired, but the corners of his lips could not help but curl up. Calculating the time, today is the day that you should be back. I have to go back earlier today. Lord Chu Ning. Lord Chu Ning. Bad news. A subordinate hurriedly ran over with a face full of panic. Chu Ning opened his eyes and knitted his brows. What's wrong? His Majesty ordered us to search your residence. They're almost at your residence now. Chu Ning suddenly stood up. What? Digression, everyone, sleep early. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 361. Get in. Search the place thoroughly, inside and out. Don't miss a single corner. Yes. With Lu Yun's order, the guards immediately rushed forward, intending to knock down the door of the Chu residence. When Chu Ning arrived, he happened to see this scene. Lu Yun. He immediately yelled out. How dare you? Lu Yun looked back and saw Chu Ning hurrying over with a group of people. Not only was there not the slightest trace of panic on his face, he even revealed a gloating smile. Oh! Isn't this Lord Chu Ning? You're busy with government affairs. Why are you suddenly here in broad daylight? Chu Ning quickly stepped forward with a cold expression. This is my residence. Let's see who dares to barge in. When he spoke, he contained the powerful aura of a stage 5 warrior, immediately causing Lu Yun to feel a tightness in his chest. Even the guards standing at the door were fearful. They couldn't help but stop and look at each other. Lu Yun was annoyed and the smile on his face gradually faded. Lord Chu Ning, what are you doing? I'm here today on His Majesty's orders. If you really want to stop me, you're defying the orders. Chu Ning stared at him coldly. I naturally don't dare to defy His Majesty's orders. But even if you want to search, you have to give a reason, right? After all, I'm the commander of the Imperial Guards. I'm sorry, Lord Chu Ning. We're just following orders. If you really want to know the reason, why don't you find His Majesty personally? Lu Yun snorted and waved his hand. Continue. Yes. Chu Ning was about to step forward when Zhao Ming suddenly persuaded in a low voice. Lord, you must calm down. This time, they're here on His Majesty's orders. If this matter blows up, it won't do you any good. His Majesty might even think that Chu Ning was defying the orders. Chu Ning took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. All right. Since that's the case, I'll see what you can find. He had never done anything wrong, so naturally, he wasn't afraid of this. But, why did His Majesty suddenly act like this? Lu Yun saw Chu Ning lowering his head and felt smug. During this period of time, Lu Yao had been harmed miserably by the Chu family. The worst ones were Chu Ning and Chu Luyue. If they hadn't deliberately stirred up trouble, Lu Yao would still be in control of the Chu clan's finances. How could they have fallen to the point where they were hated by everyone? He wasn't on good terms with Lu Yao, but Lu Yao was still a member of the Lu family. Her reputation was ruined, and the Lu family was implicated as well. More importantly, she still had to go back and ask the Lu family for money to fill those holes. He was dissatisfied with Lu Yao, and even more resentful of Chu Ning and his daughter. Now that he had a chance to deal with them, he would definitely not miss it. Dong! The door was slammed open. Numerous guards swarmed in. Lu Yun flashed a provocative smile at Chu Ning, then stepped inside. Chu Ning frowned and followed closely behind. The group of people had already spread out, quickly and violently searching the courtyard and rooms. Lu Yun stood in the middle of the courtyard, hands behind his back, issuing orders without pause. That room. Go in and look for it. And the one next to him. We've searched thoroughly. Did someone go to the backyard? If you find anything out of the ordinary, report it immediately. Chu Ning was standing not far away. She clearly saw those people throwing out many things from his bedroom. Mattresses, bookshelves, clothes. Even things like tea sets, brushes, and ink were thrown on the ground outside. Many things were broken, and the floor was in a mess. Lu Yun turned around to look at Chu Ning. When he saw the latter's ugly expression, he couldn't help but move closer and persuade him proudly. Lord Chu Ning, don't be angry. This is His Majesty's decree. Instead of being angry, why don't you think about what your precious daughter has done? Chu Ning's gaze sharpened as he stared at Lu Yun. What did you say? Lu Yun shrugged nonchalantly. Chu Ning's brows furrowed even tighter. He never thought that this matter had something to do with you, What did you, do for His Majesty to issue such an order? While he was thinking, he suddenly saw those people about to rush into Chu Liyue's room. How dare you! Chu Ning shouted sternly. In a flash, he appeared in front of those people. Lu Yun raised his brows. Oh, Lord Chu Ning, are you really going against His Majesty? Chu Ning's gaze swept across the crowd as he enunciated each word clearly. You can search if you want, but if you dare to damage anything in here, don't blame me for being merciless. His aura was extremely strong, and coupled with his stern voice, it made everyone fearful. Even Lu Yun couldn't help but shudder as he forced himself to speak. Didn't you hear me? Be careful. Chu Ning finally moved aside after hearing his words. Those people no longer had the excitement from before, and they walked in carefully. Chu Ning stood at the door, his gaze like a sharp blade scraping back and forth between them. Lu Yun felt very aggrieved, but he also knew that if he angered Chu Ning, he wouldn't have a good ending. Thus, he could only swallow his anger. When they found something, he would definitely ask His Majesty to punish Chu Ning severely. Chu Ning stared at these people's movements as he kept thinking about why His Majesty suddenly did this. You, went to Tai Yen Academy 10 days ago and hadn't been home during this period. What were they looking for here? Just as Chu Ning was puzzled, someone suddenly shouted from outside, Master, Lord Lu. Found it. Chu Ning was shocked and immediately turned around. He saw a guard suddenly run over from the backyard and quickly rushed to Lu Yun, presenting the item in his hands. Lord Lu. Please take a look. Lu Yun picked up the hairpin and took a closer look. His expression changed, and he sneered at Chu Ning. Lord Chu Ning, the evidence is conclusive. What else do you have to say? Chu Ning quickly walked over. What are you talking about? Lord Chu Ning, why are you acting dumb? Lu Yun raised the hairpin in his hands and sneered. This hairpin is the fourth princess's accessory, but it has now appeared in your backyard. Are you still going to deny it? Chu Ning was stunned for a moment before he suddenly understood. Fourth Princess Rongzhen went missing, and His Majesty even put the Empress under house arrest because of it. Not many people knew about this, but as the Imperial Guard's commander-in-chief, he was well aware of it. And now, the missing fourth princess's accessory had been found in their house. Are you suspecting that you hid the fourth princess? Chu Ning blurted out. It's not a suspicion. Now that we have evidence, it's a fact. Lu Yun put away the hairpin and looked at him mockingly. Lord Chu Ning, please come with us. Prince Li's mansion. Rong Xiao was taking a nap on a rattan chair when Yuemo quickly ran over. Your Highness. Lord Chu Ning has been arrested. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 362. Rong Xiao opened his eyes, and there seemed to be ripples in the depths of his eyes. When did this happen? Just an hour ago. Lu Yun brought people to the Chu family to search and found fourth Princess Rongzhen's hairpin. They confirmed that Miss Lu Yu hid the fourth princess. As Miss Lu Yu hasn't returned yet, they brought Lord Chu Ning away. They should be in the palace by now. Yuemo quickly explained the situation. He glanced at his master's expression and asked tentatively, "What's the matter?" "Master, what do you think we should do now?" Rong Xiao's thin red lips curved up into a perfect arc with some laziness. However, the corners of his eyes and brows were cold like the chill of spring. They sure know how to choose the time. Yuemo was dazed before he reacted. Now that Chu Luiyue isn't in the imperial city, they'll definitely interrogate Chu Ning. In addition, they found the so-called evidence, so they'll be even more confident. Chu Ning might suffer a lot. Now that Mu Qinghe is still in the imperial city, even if Chu Luiyue comes back, they won't dare to do anything to him. However, they can still make Chu Luiyue suffer if they target Chu Ning. You're saying that they're planning to take this opportunity to take revenge? Rong Xiao lightly said. Rong Xiao is missing. Si Meng is exposed, and the Empress is in danger. Naturally, they won't give up this opportunity. To the Empress, it wasn't important whether she could find Rongzhen or not. The important thing was to find out who hid Rongzhen. It was obvious that they were planning to push all the blame to Chu Luiyue. This way, part of Emperor Jiawen's anger would definitely be transferred to Chu Luiyue. Even if Chu Luiyue had Mu Qinghe's relationship, and Emperor Jiawen wouldn't dare to do anything to him, it would still be beneficial for the Empress and the rest to escape punishment. Yuemo worriedly asked, why? In that case, aren't they planning to bite Ms. Luiyue and Lord Chu Ning to death? Rong Xiao's smile turned cold. That's why there's that hairpin. Yuemo sucked in a cold breath. You're saying, roar. A low and angry roar was suddenly heard. Yuemo looked up and saw a strong white lion suddenly appear in front of him. It was Xue Xue. There was a fire in its icy blue eyes. Rong Xiao glanced at it, and Xue Xue walked over and lay beside his feet. Since the Empress wants to make a fuss, let's let her. Fourth princess must be lonely and scared recently. You should go and play with her later. Rong Xiao's voice was as cold and low as usual. His last syllable was slightly raised with a hint of laziness. Xue of mastered, Xue. Xue Xue licked its claws unwillingly. That Rongzhen was dirty, smelly, and only knew how to squeak. It really hated her. Unfortunately, it didn't dare to disobey its master's orders. Sigh, I miss someone so much. Thinking of this, Xue Xue lifted her head and looked at Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao glanced at it. No. Xue Xue's huge head shook and moved closer, as if trying to act cute. Rong Xiao's voice was slightly cold. She played with you for a long time last time, right? Seems like you think it's too much. Shue's body stiffened. He had actually been discovered. Didn't it just let Chu Luiyue accompany it in the forest for a while? It had not seen her for a long time. Shui stood up and left resentfully. Umo glanced at it and actually felt that its huge and muscular back revealed a trace of sadness. He coughed and retracted his gaze. Master, about Lord Chu Ning, third brother doesn't seem to be doing anything recently, Rongxiu suddenly said. Umo was dazed and nodded. Yes. His Majesty hasn't let the third prince leave the imperial city. Everyone thinks that he wants to take over the third prince's military power, so there aren't many people who interact with him. Rongxiu picked up the book beside him and casually flipped it open. That's good too. Did the Northwest Army get in touch with him? According to your instructions, everything is going smoothly. Besides, the third prince doesn't know about this. Umo was confused as he spoke. Your Highness, aren't you worried that you're helping the third prince like this? Rongjiu has military power in his hands. If things continue to develop, nobody knows what Rongjiu will do. The Empress and the Crown Prince should be worried. Rongxiu flipped open a page of the book and seemed to be unconcerned about this. Go and tell third brother about the fourth princess. Yes. Palace. Emperor Jiawen sat at the head of the table while the Empress sat at the side. She was holding the hairpin that Luyan found as tears streamed down her face. This is indeed Jinzhen's. I gave it to her on her 13th birthday. Her nickname is engraved on it, so there's no doubt about it. Poor Jinzhen. I've let her down, Emperor Jiawen stared at Chu Ning sternly. Chu Ning, what else do you have to say? Chu Ning lifted his sleeves and knelt on the floor. Your Majesty is wise. I really don't know where this hairpin came from. I also don't know where the fourth princess is now. However, I can use my life to guarantee that this has nothing to do with you, Emperor Jiawen was also very conflicted. He knew what kind of person Chu Ning was. Since he was willing to swear, it meant that he really believed that Chu Luiyue didn't do it. But, how could he explain the hairpin? Lord Chu Ning. Take it that I'm begging you. Just tell His Majesty and this consort where Jinzhen is right now. The Empress looked at Chu Ning with tears all over her face as if she was heartbroken. As long as she's fine, I won't pursue the other matters. Chu Ning's face tensed up. Your Majesty, I won't admit to anything that I didn't do. The Empress's eyes turned, and she wiped her tears as she tried to ask. Then, is it possible that Chu Luiyue did it, but you don't know about it? Chu Ning looked at her coldly. Your Majesty, do you want me to identify my daughter as the culprit behind the kidnapping of the fourth princess? I didn't mean that. Jinzhen has been missing for a few days, and His Majesty and I are very worried. I don't want to think this way, but this hairpin really can't be denied. Emperor Jiawen kept quiet for a long time before he said, that's right. Why don't we wait for Chu Luiyue to come back from Tai Yan Academy before we interrogate him together? The Empress quickly gave Rongqi, who was at the side, a look. Rongqi immediately said, Father. You mustn't. If Chu Luiyue really did it, then Lord Chu Ning will definitely find a way to cover it up. Why don't we lock him up first and interrogate him strictly? This way, we won't have to be afraid that Chu Luiyue won't tell the truth when he comes back. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. The Empress immediately scolded him. Rongqi. How can you treat Lord Chu Ning like this before the verdict is out? Rongqi said aggrievedly, I'm doing this for Jinzhen. Emperor Jiawen thought for a long time and finally said, Guards. Lock Chu Ning up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 363. Your Majesty. The third prince wishes to see you. The announcement was suddenly heard. Everyone in the palace was shocked. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. Tell him that I'm busy and ask him to wait in the imperial study. Eunuch Min wiped the sweat off his forehead. Your Majesty, the third prince said that he must see you immediately. Emperor Jiawen's face turned even uglier as he slammed the table. He's getting more and more brazen. The matters in the past 2 days had already made him very frustrated, and he didn't expect Rongjiu to join in the fun. Rongjiu has always been well behaved in the imperial city. Why is he suddenly like this? Eunuch Min shuddered and wanted to cry. Your Majesty, the third prince said that he came today because of the fourth princess. Oh. Emperor Jiawen was a little surprised as he knitted his brows. He doesn't have much contact with Zhen. What happened today? At the side, the Empress's heart skipped a beat, and she felt uneasy. The last time Rongjin was grounded was because Rongjiu complained to His Majesty. I wonder what he's up to today. She worriedly persuaded him. Your Majesty, we shouldn't air our dirty linen in public. It's better not to blow up Zhen's disappearance, right? It's better for the royal family and Zhen to investigate. If the third prince is involved, it won't be easy. Emperor Jiawen thought for a moment and shook his head. Rongjiu has always been calm. Since he dares to come, he must know something. As he spoke, he raised his hand at Eunuch Min. Let him in. Yes. Eunuch Min hurriedly went outside the palace and invited Rongjiu in. The Empress secretly bit her lips, and for some reason, she became even more nervous. Very quickly, Rongjiu walked in with big strides. He had been on the battlefield for many years. Even though he was only 20 years old and younger than Rongjin, he had a strong physique and a strong aura around him. Even though he was wearing a robe, it couldn't hide his general's murderous aura. This was the aura that one would only have after experiencing a life-and-death battle on the battlefield. Rongjiu's gaze quickly swept across the palace, and it paused on the Empress especially for a moment. The Empress's heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly looked away. Your son greets Imperial Father and Imperial Mother. Rongjiu stood still in the palace, cupped his fists, and bowed to Emperor Jiawen and the Empress. Emperor Jiawen didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. There's no need to be so formal. You said earlier that you knew some news about Rongzhen. Is that true? Rongjiu nodded. This son requests an audience with Imperial Father today precisely because of this. Emperor Jiawen sat up straight. Speak. Rongjiu's gaze landed on Chu Ning. When I was outside, I heard that Imperial Father was planning to imprison Lord Chu Ning. Emperor Jiawen was confused, but he didn't deny it. That's right. Rongjiu shook his head. Imperial Father, you mustn't do this. You've wrongly accused Lord Chu Ning. I can confirm that Lord Chu Ning has nothing to do with this matter. Once she said that, not only Emperor Jiawen and the Empress, but even Chu Ning was shocked. This. Rongjiu actually came to speak up for me. Chu Ning quickly recalled in his mind. He didn't seem to have much interaction with the third prince. At such a critical moment, anyone who gets involved will be in trouble. Others can't wait to avoid it, so why is he? Rongjiu, do you know what you're saying? Emperor Jiawen's expression instantly became stern, and his voice was filled with authority. Rongjiu's expression didn't change. I know. In actual fact, not only Lord Chu Ning, but even Chu Luyue also has nothing to do with this matter. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Third Prince, do you know that Lu Yun has already found Jinjin's hairpin in Chu Ning's house? The evidence is conclusive, and you can't deny it. Why are you speaking up for Chu Ning and his daughter like this? Rongjiu revealed a meaningful smile as he looked at the Empress and slowly said, "Her Majesty, did Rongjin really drop that hairpin in Lord Chu Ning's house?" The Empress's heart skipped a beat. What did you say? I heard that Lord Lu Yun brought people to search back then, and Lord Chu Ning's family. Everyone knows that after severing ties with the Chu family, Lord Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue have been living in a new mansion. They didn't even hire any servants. During the search, only Lord Chu Ning was there. If someone purposely brought this hairpin over and lied about finding it there, who would discover it? Even if Lord Chu Ning had 3 heads and 6 arms, I'm afraid he can't keep an eye on everyone, right? Emperor Zhaoen's expression changed slightly. Rongjiu's words did make sense. The Empress secretly tightened her grip on the chair's armrest. Third Prince, this hairpin was found in the backyard. Many guards at that time can testify. Could it be that they are all lying? Rongjiu paused and suddenly asked, "Her Majesty, may I know if the hairpin in your hand is the one you found in Lord Chu Ning's house?" The Empress was flustered by his words, so she nodded subconsciously when she heard him ask this. "Yes, this is it." "That's it." Rongjiu's expression became even more thought-provoking. "This hairpin is exquisite and very eye-catching. Even if I'm standing here, I can still see it from such a distance. I wonder if Lord Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue are blind. That's why they couldn't see this hairpin and purposely left it in the yard." The Empress retorted in a panic, perhaps Chu Luiyue was too flustered back then, so she didn't notice it. After all, the yard is very big. She can't see every corner. "Her Majesty, you said that this hairpin was found in the backyard, and many guards saw it with their own eyes. Why are you talking about corners now?" Rongjiu's nonchalant words made the Empress stop talking. The entire palace suddenly fell into dead silence. Chu Ning's expression turned serious. "Your Majesty, I was in the front yard back then, and the guards were in the backyard. I really didn't see them find the hairpin." Emperor Zhaoen stared at the Empress, and his gaze gradually turned cold. "Empress, what else do you want to say?" I just made a slip of the tongue." The Empress hurriedly knelt down. "Your Majesty, I've been in the palace all this while and never went out. I also didn't see the scene back then, so I naturally don't know what happened. I just made a slip of the tongue." Rongjiu lightly glanced at her in a seemingly smiling manner. "Her Majesty, it seems like this matter really has nothing to do with you." "Of course not. Zhenzhen is my daughter. Now that she's missing, I'm naturally the most anxious." Hatred flashed across the Empress's eyes. Now, she could tell that Rongjiu came here today to drag her down completely. She looked up and anxiously looked at Emperor Zhaoen. "Your Majesty, everything I said is true. Situ Xingchen personally saw that Zhenzhen was with Chu Luiyue before she went missing. I can testify." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 364. This sentence was no different from a sudden clap of thunder, suddenly exploding. Everyone in the hall was shocked. Even Rongjiu knitted his brows slightly. Emperor Zhaoen asked in a low voice, "Why are you here? Are you telling the truth?" Situ Xingchen really said that. The Empress nodded repeatedly. "If you don't believe me, you can ask Situ Xingchen." Chu Ning suddenly said, "Your Majesty, where did you hear this from?" Of course, Situ Xingchen said it herself. At this point, the Empress couldn't care less and could only confess that she had been communicating with Rongjin. Situ Xingchen told Rongjin about this, and Rongjin told her about it. "I know I'm in the wrong, but..." Rongjin did it for Rongjin. "Your Majesty." Emperor Zhaoen felt his head hurt. Things seemed to be getting more and more complicated. Everyone had their own version of the story, and what they said differed greatly. Someone must be lying, but he couldn't immediately tell. Seeing that Emperor Zhaowen's expression wavered for a moment, the Empress immediately said, "Don't worry. Your Majesty, City Xingqian already knows about Rongjin's disappearance. This time, she plans to come back with Rongjin to help find Rongjin. Why don't we wait for them to come back and confront each other?" Emperor Zhaowen disagreed. Chu Luiyue is going to Tai Yan Academy for a month, and only 1/3 of the time has passed. If we keep waiting for her, Rongjin, Your Majesty, you will be back soon. She said earlier that she would only be gone for 10 days, Chu Ning said. These words surprised the others. Chu Luiyue only stayed for 10 days for such a rare opportunity. Emperor Zhaowen kept quiet for a while and finally decided. Since that's the case, let's wait for them to return and ask them together. The Empress finally heaved a sigh of relief. Her body went limp and she almost fell to the ground. With City Xingqian as a witness, Chu Luiyue definitely can't escape this time. At that time, even if she didn't die, she would still make her lose a layer of skin. Imperial Father is wise. This way, they would definitely be able to find Rongjin as soon as possible, and Lord Chu Ning wouldn't be wronged for no reason. Lord Chu Ning has always been loyal to you. It wouldn't be good if Lord Chu Ning's feelings were hurt because of some misunderstanding, said Rongjiu as he cupped his fists. The hall fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew that the so-called misunderstanding was caused by the Empress. Emperor Zhaowen's gaze became much darker. All of you can leave first. The Empress stayed. Chu Ning walked out of the palace and thanked Rongjiu solemnly. Thank you for your help this time, Third Prince. Otherwise, he might really be locked up. Rongjiu looked nonchalant. Lord Chu Ning, there's no need to be so polite. I'm helping you because I'm helping myself. Chu Ning was taken aback. He did not expect Rongjiu to be so honest. Of course, he could guess Rongjiu's purpose for coming here today. From start to end, Rongjiu only targeted one person, the Empress. Especially the words he said just before he left the hall, it gave the Empress a push. The reason why Rongjiu did this was most likely because his birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then. Even though this matter wasn't conclusive and there was no evidence, Chu Ning was in the limelight back then and was highly regarded by Emperor Zhaowen. Thus, he more or less knew some things. Looking at Rongjiu's appearance, he clearly came prepared. No matter what, I have to thank you, Third Prince. I'll definitely repay this favor in the future. Rongjiu did not seem to care. The two of them chatted for a while before parting ways. Chu Ning hesitated for a while and decided to return to his residence first. Previously, Lu Yun brought so many people and turned the house into a mess, so he had to hurry back to clean it up. If Yu saw this, she would definitely be very worried. In the end, Chu Luiyue did not return with Rongjin and the rest. She only used one sentence to dissuade Rongjin from stopping her. I've already arranged a time to go back with Vice Admiral Mu. Whoever delays it will be responsible. Rongjin had just gotten married to City Xingqian and was in the prime of his success. He originally wanted to show off his authority as the crown prince in front of Chu Luiyue, but it was a pity that he was not completely blinded by it. He knew who he could offend and who he could not. Thus, he could only sullenly give way to Chu Luiyue. As for City Xingqian, she did not say much from start to end and stayed out of the matter. It was as if she had forgotten that Rongjin only came to find trouble with Chu Luiyue after hearing what she said. Chu Luiyue returned to the imperial city very quickly and successfully. The moment he reached home, the door was opened from the inside before Chu Luiyue could even knock on the door. The person standing at the door was Chu Ning. When Chu Luiyue saw him, he was elated and shocked. Father, why are you home? It's not a day off today. Chu Ning first sized her up and made sure that she was fine before he heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that you're back safely. I have something to ask you. The father-daughter duo returned to the house together. Chu Ning told Chu Luiyue everything that happened previously. Does the fourth princess's disappearance have anything to do with you? Asked Chu Ning uncertainly. Chu Luiyue smiled, and his eyes curved into crescents. Didn't you say it in front of His Majesty? You said that you believed that I didn't do it. Since you said so, this naturally has nothing to do with me. Chu Ning then heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. I heard from the Empress that Situ Xingchen saw you with Rongzhen, so I was a little worried. With Situ Xingchen's status, her words carried a lot of weight. He believed in his daughter, but the development of the matter seemed to be a little out of control. Chu Luiyue smiled nonchalantly. I know about this. Before I came back, Rongjin wanted me to take responsibility for Rongzhen's disappearance because he heard Situ Xingchen talk about this. Chu Ning knitted his brows. Situ Xingchen has no feud with us, so why did she say all this? Chu Liuyue's eyes sparkled. She probably saw wrongly. Chu Ning didn't quite believe it. What kind of person is Situ Xingchen? She definitely knows what kind of effect these words will have if she says them. This will most likely harm you, If she really saw wrongly, she shouldn't have made such a big fuss without confirming it. This really doesn't fit the image of Situ Xingchen in the rumors. This Situ Xingchen is a little strange, muttered Chu Ning. Chu Luiyue didn't want him to worry, so he patted his arm and smiled. Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing and won't let anyone bully me. Chu Ning's worry didn't completely disappear because of this. But His Majesty said that he wants you to confront each other when you come back. What should we do? If Situ Xingchen insists that you, did it, Chu Liuyue's lips curved up slightly. My pleasure. Digression, she felt hungry as she wrote, so she ran to wolf down another bowl of noodles. Writing is really tiring. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 365. Chu Luiyue then went to visit Mu Qinghe, but she found that he wasn't at his residence. She waited outside the barrier for a while, but there was still no movement, so she turned around and left. She felt a little strange. If Hong Yao was here, it would have rushed out long ago. Since there was no sound for so long, Hong Yao and Mu Qinghe must not be here. What place in country Yao Chen's imperial capital could attract him? Chu Luiyue was puzzled as she turned to Prince Li's mansion. Prince Li's mansion was the same as usual. It didn't seem to have changed, but Chu Luiyue keenly noticed that the security here had become stricter. Seeing that it was her, the servants of Prince Li's mansion immediately welcomed her happily. When Yuemo heard the news, he hurriedly came out to welcome her. Miss Lu Yu. You're finally back. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh when she saw his excited face. It's not my first time here. Do you have to be so excited? Of course. Of course. You don't know, but we've been looking forward to your return these past few days. Yumo's eyes were almost brimming with tears. If she didn't come back soon, their lives would be too difficult. Master is in the study room. I'll bring you there. As he spoke, Yuemo led Chu Luiyue to the study room. Chu Luiyue followed behind him and quietly sized up the layout of the mansion. She realized that it was indeed a little different from before. She took in all of this, but she didn't show it on her face, nor did she say anything. Soon, the two of them arrived outside the study room. Yuemo stopped. Master is inside. You can go in. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Just as she walked to the door, a white figure flashed in front of her. She was very surprised. Shue Shue. She hadn't seen Shue Shue since she left the imperial capital. She really missed it. Shue Shue looked at her with its tail wagging, its eyes filled with joy. It was obviously very happy about her return. It jumped twice on the spot and couldn't help but run 2 laps around Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue chuckled. All right, I know what you want. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand, intending to pat Shue Shue's head. Shue Shue obediently moved its huge head closer. Whoosh! Chu Luiyue's hand was halfway out when a red shadow flashed in front of his eyes. Immediately, he felt something extra on the back of his hand. She looked over and saw that it was Dumpling. At this moment, it was hugging her wrist. Its round eyes looked at her innocently and sadly, as if it was complaining about something. Chu Luiyue glanced at his hand. Very good. He was already completely occupied by Dumpling. It was impossible for him to touch Shue Shue anymore. Shue Shue growled. Just as she was about to charge forward, she suddenly heard a cough coming from the room. Shue immediately moved to the side obediently and looked straight ahead, as if nothing had happened before. Dumpling turned around and gave it a look of disdain. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She looked at the door of the study and walked forward. Creak, the door of the study opened. Chu Luiyue saw Rong Xiu sitting behind the table. He was wearing a black cloak and his face was a little pale. There was a cup of hot tea beside him and a book in his hand. He just sat there quietly, and there seemed to be an indescribable aura lingering around him. He was gentle and calm, like a gentleman. Hearing the sound of the door being pushed open, he raised his head. The moment he lifted his eyelids, there seemed to be countless stars flickering in his deep and clear eyes. This time, it was completely different from the previous time. Those eyes seemed to be able to contain everything in the world, but they were also high and mighty. Noble and lazy, looking down on the world. The moment their eyes met, Chu Luiyue could clearly hear her heart beating violently. The blood in her eardrums surged and seemed to be buzzing. Rong Xiu's lips curved. You're back. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Yes. Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. The door behind Chu Luiyue was suddenly closed. The dazzling sunlight was blocked outside the door. Rong Xiu opened his mouth, and his voice was as cold as jade striking against each other. I thought you wouldn't have time to come until tomorrow. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Then, an incredible idea came to her mind. Rong Xiu was jealous. Based on his means and strength, she was probably already under his control from the moment she returned to the capital. However, she first went to see her father, then went to visit Mu Qinghe, and finally came to Prince Li's mansion. Rong Xiu seemed to be unhappy because of this. Chu Luiyue couldn't help laughing. How could I? Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. Chu Luiyue approached him step by step. Until there was only a table between them, she bent down, put her hands on the table, and approached Rong Xiu. The two were so close that they could almost hear each other's breathing. Chu Luiyue could even smell the familiar cold fragrance on him. Her heart beat faster, but her eyes were as bright as the Milky Way. The reason why I came to see you last is because, she didn't finish her words, but suddenly leaned closer and kissed Rong Xiu's lips. It was cool and hot, slow and urgent. Rong Xiu didn't seem to expect Chu Luiyue to suddenly do this, and he was stunned for a moment. Chu Luiyue whispered softly, and her voice was broken between her lips and teeth. That's the answer. Of course, she missed him and wanted to come back to see him as soon as possible. But there were some things that needed to be dealt with first. Otherwise, the two of them would only meet for a short time, and she would have to busy herself with other things. So, she might as well settle all the messy things on hand before coming. Without any burden, she felt refreshed. The only thing she didn't expect was that she missed Rongxiu more than she imagined. It wasn't obvious when she was in Tai Yen Academy, and it wasn't obvious on the way back. Even when she just arrived at Prince Li's mansion, she didn't think much of it. But the moment she saw Rongxiu, an overwhelming longing suddenly surged in her heart. The longing that she had intentionally or unintentionally suppressed instantly drowned her. Her mind seemed to be blank, and there was only one thought left. Kiss him. Only when she touched his soft and cool lips did she finally feel at ease. After a while, when she saw that Rongxiu didn't move, she bit him lightly in a fit of pique. Rongxiu reached out to pull her, and at the same time, counterattacked. However, Chu Liyue lightly licked his lips and quickly moved away. She leaned toward his ear and gently placed her hand on his cloak as she softly asked, "Why are you here?" "Rongxiu, aren't you hot?" "Oh, I almost forgot. Prince Li is seriously ill, and now is the time to recuperate." "You can't, Rongxiu's eyes instantly darkened. The next moment, he suddenly grabbed Chu Liyue's chin with one hand, tilted his head, and kissed her fiercely. If he could still tolerate this situation, he would really be sick. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 366. After Rongxiu was satisfied, he finally let go of Chu Liyue slowly. He lowered his eyes and looked at the girl's red and slightly swollen lips. He rubbed his fingers affectionately and spoke lazily in a hoarse voice. Looks like you made the right decision." Chu Liyue snapped out of her daze and immediately glared at him. However, her watery eyes didn't have any fierceness. Instead, they looked even more breathtaking. Rongxiu chuckled and kissed her again before finally letting go. "Come here." Chu Liyue walked around the table to his side and leaned over to look at the book he had put aside. "What are you looking at?" Every time she came, Rongxiu seemed to be reading. She glanced at it and saw that it seemed to be a biography. Rongxiu held her slender waist and pulled her into his arms. Chu Liyue leaned against his chest just like that. Rongxiu rubbed her waist with one hand and took the book with the other. "Do you want to read it?" Chu Liyue felt that Rongxiu's hand seemed to have magical powers. He only pressed her waist twice, and a wave of heat spread through her body. She felt as if her entire body had gone limp and relaxed. She relaxed her body and felt that the fatigue she had felt during this period of time seemed to have lessened quite a bit. She took the book and looked up in surprise when she saw the name on it. "You moved out of the academy." She remembered seeing this book in Yifeng Courtyard. Rongxiu didn't find it strange that she remembered, so he nodded nonchalantly. "Mother's things have basically been packed, so there's no need to continue living here." Of course, another important reason was that the person in his arms wouldn't be staying there for too long. Chu Liyue recalled the things he had taken out from Joyo Tower and nodded in understanding. She unintentionally flipped open the book and took a look. Rongxiu had been pretending to be sick ever since he returned to the imperial capital. He rarely stepped out of Prince Li's mansion and basically stayed here. Hence, she was actually quite curious about what Rongxiu usually read. However, Chu Liyue was suddenly stunned with just a glance. It was actually a map. And it was a map of the imperial capital. After she was reborn, she had specially investigated the situation of the imperial capital, including the overall terrain of the imperial capital. Hence, when she first saw this map, she immediately recognized that it was a map of the imperial capital. What shocked her even more was the detailed distribution of the military forces on the map. The entire imperial capital's defense situation. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. So, what Rongxiu was not reading books every day, she instinctively looked up at Rongxiu. Rong Xiu's expression was normal, as if he didn't think it was a big deal at all. Chu Luiyue thought that he didn't expect her to be able to understand this thing and couldn't help but tug at his clothes. He wasn't interested in comparing himself to Rong Jin, but since it was her compliment, he still chose to accept it. Chu Luiyue placed the book back and continued to nestle in Rong Xiu's arms. Rong Xiu rubbed his chin against her soft hair. "Let's not talk about this. Why don't we talk about the wedding date?" Chu Luiyue was dazed and knitted her brows awkwardly. "We really need to discuss this matter properly. Mu Qinghe is still in the imperial city, and I don't know when he'll return to the Tianling dynasty. If he's leaving soon, we won't have time to get married. If he wants to wait for a while, we can hold our wedding. However, I don't know when I'll have to follow him back to the Tianling dynasty. The road ahead is dangerous, and I don't know what kind of situation I'll face when I return. If Rong Xiu is involved, it'll be even harder to handle. Of course, I can't bear to leave Rong Xiu, but I have to go back to the Tianling dynasty." She knitted her brows and thought for a long time. Suddenly, she stood up and left Rong Xiu's arms. She sat opposite him with a serious expression. "Rong Xiu, I have something to tell you." Rong Xiu looked at her with deep eyes. "I'm all ears." The next day, Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen finally returned to the imperial city. Chu Luiyue was sitting cross-legged at home. She placed her hands on her knees and absorbed the surrounding heaven and earth force. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's voice came from outside the door. "Lord Chu Ning, Miss Lu Yu, His Majesty and Her Majesty are waiting in the palace. Please come in." Digression: yesterday, I slept at 3:00 again. I was about to go crazy. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 367. Palace. When Chu Luiyue arrived with Chu Ning, Emperor Jiawen and the Empress were already waiting in the palace. Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen were also seated below. On the other side was another person, Rong Zhou. Chu Luiyue had already heard about what happened from Chu Ning, so she wasn't surprised that Rong Zhou was here. Her gaze quickly swept across the few people in the palace. Emperor Jiawen was expressionless, but his eyes were dark. Compared to the last time she saw her, the Empress looked much more haggard, as if she had aged by 10 years. It was obvious that the recent events had tortured her quite a bit. When Rong Jin saw Chu Luiyue, a complicated expression flashed across his face. He was holding a hairpin in his hand. Chu Luiyue guessed that it was the one that they said they found Rong Jin in their backyard. Situ Xingchen and Rong Zhou looked calm, and one couldn't tell what was going on. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue bowed one by one. Emperor Jiawen told the two of them to sit down. "Okay, since everyone is here, let's start." Emperor Jiawen had already lost his patience, so he went straight to the point as he looked at Situ Xingchen. He looked at Situ Xingchen and asked, "Xingchen, you previously said that you saw Lu Yu and Jinjin together. Is that true?" Situ Xingchen stood up and bowed. "Your Majesty, I don't dare to lie, and everything I said is true. As Jiuyo Tower caught fire that day, I remember it very clearly. After Jiuyo Tower collapsed, I quickly went back to pack my luggage because Tai Yen Academy was leaving the next day. I didn't expect to coincidentally see Rong Zhen and Chu Luiyue on the way." Emperor Jiawen asked, "Was there anyone else then?" "There was an elder in a long black robe, but I didn't see his face." "Then, did you hear what they said?" "I was quite a distance away, so I didn't hear them. However, I saw that the two of them were very close, so I thought that they were very close. I didn't expect." Emperor Jiawen's face turned even colder. The elder in a long black robe who followed them was definitely Si Meng. If Situ Xingchen was lying, how did she know about Si Meng's existence? Actually, when I saw this scene that day, I felt a little strange. Situ Xingchen looked up at Emperor Jiawen and hesitantly said, "That's because His Majesty had just married Prince Li and Chu Luyue that day. So when I saw her with Rongjin, I was confused for a long time." Everyone understood. The timing was too special. No matter how close Chu Luyue and Rongjin were, they shouldn't have been together on the day of Rongjin's marriage. Moreover, who didn't know that there was a conflict between the two of them? It was really suspicious that they were together. Emperor Jiawen asked again. "And then? Did you see where they went?" Situ Xingchen shook her head. "At that time, I only took a glance from afar. Because I was in a hurry to go back, I left. I don't know where they're going." Emperor Jiawen nodded. "Sit down." Then, he turned to look at Chu Luyue. "Luyu, you heard what I said just now. What do you have to say?" Chu Luyue lightly knocked on the chair's armrest with one hand and looked at Situ Xingchen in deep thought. What she said just now was actually very vague, but Simeng's existence gave her words a lot more credibility. After all, even Emperor Jiawen didn't know about Simeng's existence previously. Since Situ Xingchen could say this, it was naturally easy for people to believe her. This also meant that Situ Xingchen had long known about Simeng's existence. Perhaps she even knew what happened that day. But for some reason, she couldn't say it completely and could only choose a middle ground. After all, even if that was the case, she could still push Rongjin's matter to her. Chu Luyue lightly said, "I didn't see Rongjin at all. That day, I didn't see Rongjin. That day, Prince Li sent someone to send me and my father home. After that, the people of the Chu family sent an invitation, and my father went there. I stayed at home the whole time and didn't come out. The Chu family can testify to this." Quite a few people knew that Chu Ning went to the Chu residence, and it was privately discussed for a long time. Everyone knew that the Chu family regretted chasing Chu Ning and his daughter out and was thinking of ways to persuade them to go back. Chu Ning said, "That's right. That's right. That day, Yu wanted to go back with me, but I stopped her, so she stayed at home. Even if that's the case, who can prove that she didn't go out when you left, Lord Chu Ning?" Rongjin retorted. "Besides, the two of you are father and daughter, so I'm afraid your testimony can't be completely true." Chu Ning knitted his brows slightly. If the other party kept saying this, they couldn't refute him. This was because he and Yu really couldn't prove that Yu was at home during this period of time. Chu Luyue suddenly said, "That mysterious hairstyle was discovered by the Chu family. I heard that the hairpin appeared out of nowhere. Even Her Majesty the Empress couldn't tell where it came from. Then, how can everyone know that the rest of your words are true?" The Empress was furious. Chu Luyue really touched a sore spot. His Majesty was already very unhappy with her because of this hairpin yesterday. Now that she brought it up again, isn't she trying to make His Majesty look bad? Rongjin knitted his brows and hid the hairpin in his hands. He originally thought that this hairpin was solid evidence, but it was hard to say what exactly was going on from his mother's reaction. Both parties insisted on their own words, and the situation was at a standstill. Rongjiu suddenly said, "Actually, the key to this matter is to find Rongjin's whereabouts. Her Majesty, Rongjin's pearl of essence has shattered. Based on her own abilities, she definitely can't leave the palace silently." Chapter 368. The Empress smiled coldly. "You're indeed just a stage 2 warrior, but everyone in the imperial city knows that you can win against a stage 4 warrior. Perhaps you didn't display your true abilities at the Qingjiao competition. Other than you, who else would know about this? Besides, there's also that weird fiend of yours." She was talking about Dumpling. Back then, Dumpling directly swallowed Heng Jingchua's force, which left a deep impression on many people. The Empress always felt that Chu Luiyue was unpredictable. Previously, Rongzhen had mentioned that Chu Luiyue went from a useless person to a genius that everyone envied because she met with a fortuitous encounter. Perhaps Si Meng was really killed by her or the person behind her. Also, you also went up to the 6th floor of Joyo Tower previously. How do you explain this? The more the Empress spoke, the more certain she sounded. Emperor Jiaoan and the rest's expressions gradually changed. The Empress's words sounded ridiculous at first, but upon closer thought, it wasn't impossible. In the past few months, too many strange things had happened to Chu Luiyue. Things that seemed impossible to others seemed to be reasonable when it came to her. As for Si Meng's death, it was hard to say. Chu Luiyue was caught between laughter and tears. Thank you for thinking so highly of me, Your Majesty. But if it's really like what you said and I killed Si Meng, why didn't I directly kill the 4th princess as well? Wouldn't everything be over if I did that? The Empress was stumped. Rongjin angrily said. Of course, it's because you're afraid of exposing your identity. As a princess, Rongzhen has something that can help her. Once you force her into a corner, she'll definitely expose your identity and location. Chu Luiyue looked at Rongjin as if he were looking at an idiot. Your Highness, let me remind you that Her Majesty just said that I can instantly kill a stage 5 warrior. Do you think that the 4th princess's abilities and reaction are stronger than a stage 5 warrior's? Rongjin was speechless, and his face turned red and white. Si Meng must be by Rongzhen's side. If Chu Luiyue could kill Si Meng, it would be even easier to kill Rongzhen. She could definitely solve everything before Rongzhen sent out a distress signal. The Empress's face turned even uglier. She was the only one who knew that the item Rongzhen was asking for help wasn't with her but with Si Meng. Ever since her pearl of essence shattered, Si Meng had always been by her side, never leaving her side. For the sake of safety, they had already made preparations for this. However, saying these things now would prove that the person who killed Si Meng was more powerful than expected. Instead, it would make His Majesty even more disgusted. Rongjin looked at Situ Xingchen at the side awkwardly and softly said, Don't worry. Xingchen, what do we do now? Situ Xingchen sneered in her heart, and her hatred for Rongjin increased. Rongjin was even more brainless than she expected. She had no idea how he had managed to sit on the crown prince's position for so long. Situ Xingchen looked down, and her eyelashes fluttered as she innocently and sincerely said, Your Highness, I only saw what happened. Your Highness, Xingchen only saw that much that day. I've already said what I can, but there's more that I'm powerless to do. Rongjin was a little anxious. According to what you said, Rongzhen must have been hidden by Chu Luiyue, but she doesn't admit it now. This, Your Highness, I didn't say that. It's just that you said that the 4th princess met with trouble, so I unintentionally told you about this. Is it because that elder's identity is a little troublesome? Situ Xingchen discreetly removed herself from this matter. However, Rongjin didn't realize this at all. On the contrary, Situ Xingchen's words reminded him of something. Chu Luiyue, you've said so much, but you still haven't proven your innocence. On the other hand, Xingchen has never been to country Yaoqin before, so she doesn't know about Si Meng's existence. If she's lying, how did she know about Si Meng? Besides, she has no feud with anyone involved in this matter, so why would she frame you? On the other hand, Rongzhen offended you before, so you probably want to use this chance to take revenge, right? Chu Luiyue's gaze landed on Situ Xingchen, and he smiled meaningfully. Your Highness, you're right, but I really don't understand. Eldest Princess Situ and I have never interacted before, and we don't have any feud. I really don't know why Eldest Princess Situ would frame me like this. Situ Xingchen looked at Chu Luiyue calmly, and her expression was as gentle and generous as usual. Miss Chu, I didn't frame you. From the start to the end, I just said what I saw and heard. Chu Liuyue's eyes turned, and her gaze landed on Situ Xingchen's sleeves. When she saw Situ Xingchen again at Tai Yen Academy, she realized that Situ Xingchen had changed her clothes, and the cloud pattern on her sleeves was gone. When she looked at it again today, it was still the same. Chu Liyue didn't believe that Situ Xingchen didn't know that Rongxiu had burned most of his clothes that day. If she didn't feel that she was greatly humiliated, she wouldn't be like this. It was obvious that eldest Princess Situ had shifted her anger onto Lin Mingya. The Empress took the chance to say, "Your Majesty, Xingchen's words are indeed more trustworthy." On the other hand, Chu Liyue still doesn't have any evidence to prove where she was that day. From what I see, we won't be able to get anything out of her if this continues. Why don't we lock her up and order someone to interrogate her carefully? We might be able to come up with a different conclusion. The palace fell into a temporary silence. The Empress clearly meant that she wanted to torture Chu Liyue. Chu Ning stood up first. Absolutely not. I definitely can't watch you or be locked up without doing anything. What kind of place is the dungeon? How can you go to such a place? Besides, nobody knows if the Empress's men are inside. Once you goes in, I don't know what she will have to endure. Vice Admiral Mu is still in the Imperial City, and he will bring you to the Tianling dynasty at any time. If we lock you up now, may I ask your Majesty, how are you going to explain this to Vice Admiral Mu? Bringing up Mu Qinghe indeed made the Empress a lot more fearful. Then, what do you think we should do? Are we just going to let it pass like this? At this point, Rongjiu, who had been sitting at the side and keeping quiet, suddenly spoke. Actually, it's very simple. As long as we find Rongjin, the truth will naturally be revealed. The Empress sneered. You make it sound so simple. We still have to ask Chu Liyue if he's willing to hand Jinjin over. Rongjiu's expression became strange as he stood up and bowed to Emperor Zhouan solemnly. I'm guilty. Father, please punish me. Emperor Zhouan knitted his brows tightly. Rongjiu, what are you doing? Rongjiu said word by word. I saw the fourth princess a few days ago. Mobile users, please browse the internet for a better reading experience. Chapter 369. His words were like a clap of thunder. The Empress and the rest were dazed and shocked. Even the calm Emperor Zhouan couldn't help but stand up. What did you say? You saw a Rongjin previously. When and where is it? Rongjiu paused and said, You should ask her this question. Perhaps it's more appropriate for you to ask Her Majesty. The moment these words were spoken, everyone present was stunned. The Empress was confused. Rongjiu, what do you mean? Rongjiu slowly said, I know what she means. I believe the Empress is well aware of what I mean. You clearly know where Rongjin is, so why do you have to pretend that you don't and even create such a big show? The Empress was almost confused by Rongjiu's words. Her exquisite brows knitted together as she stared at Rongjiu. She finally realized that Rongjiu was here to go against her this time. Her voice instantly turned cold, and it had the usual sternness of the harem. Rongjiu, do you know what you're saying? Ever since Rongjin went missing, I've been worried day and night. Even now, I'm still worried about her. You have no evidence, so how can you say such things? As she spoke, she turned to look at Emperor Zhouan, and her eyes were filled with anger and sadness. Your Majesty is wise. I really don't know where Rongjin is now. I also don't know where the third prince's words came from. Emperor Zhouan stared at Rongjiu coldly. What do you mean by what you said just now? Rongjiu's gaze swept across the Empress as he lightly said, What do you mean? From the start to the end, this is a lie that the Empress directed and acted out herself. She hid Rongjian and wanted to take the chance to slander Lord Chu Ning and his daughter. Rongjiu's low and powerful voice reverberated in the palace, and it was clear and audible. Chu Liuyue's heart tingled, and he couldn't help but look at Rongjiu. He never expected Rongjiu to say such things. How dare you? After the shock, the Empress finally recovered her senses. She had nowhere to vent her anger, so she couldn't help but curse. What nonsense are you spouting? Rongjiu. Where do you think this place is? Who do you think this consort is? How dare you make such irresponsible remarks? As she spoke, she quickly rushed toward Rongjiu and raised her hand to harshly slap him. This consort must teach you a lesson today. Empress. Emperor Jiawen coldly scolded and immediately nailed the Empress to the ground. She suddenly recovered her senses and frantically turned around to see Emperor Jiawen glaring at her with anger. As the Empress, what are you doing? The Empress suddenly came back to her senses. She had indeed lost her bearing as an Empress. Emperor Jiawen was extremely disappointed in the Empress. Rongjiu only said a few sentences, and the Empress was agitated to this extent. She screamed and insulted him without any grace. She even wanted to hit him in front of him. What was the difference between her and those shrews on the streets? She had completely disgraced the royal family. Sensing Emperor Jiawen's anger, the Empress was afraid and aggrieved. Your Majesty, I know my mistake. But Qinxia didn't do it on purpose. Did you hear what Rongjiu said just now? Even though I'm not his birth mother, I'm still considered his mother. Yet, he slandered me like this. As the Empress spoke, 2 rows of tears fell from her eyes. She clutched her handkerchief tightly with one hand and covered her chest as if she were in extreme pain. When Rongjiu heard the words birth mother, murderous intent flashed across his eyes. It was fine if she didn't mention this, but now that she did, that *tch, the Empress, actually has the cheek to say such things. He lifted his clothes and knelt on the floor with a bang. What I've said is the truth. If there's even half a lie in what I said, may I be struck by lightning. This was a vicious oath. Once this was said, even the Empress, who was busy crying, couldn't help but pause for a moment. Chu Liyue squinted his eyes and looked at Chu Ning questioningly. Chu Ning slightly shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what was going on. Chu Liyue retracted his gaze and sized up Rongjiu again. How strange, Rongjiu has never interacted with us, so why does he keep speaking up for us this time? He's even willing to put his life on the line. As a prince, his words carry a lot of weight. As expected, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If Rongjiu dares to make such a vicious oath, then what he said is very likely true. Empress, what exactly is going on? Emperor Jiawen had already lost his patience as he angrily asked. The Empress shivered, and her tears flowed even more profusely. I really don't know. Since Her Majesty doesn't want to admit it, then I'll remind you. Do you still remember Heptagon Alley? Asked Rongjiu lightly. The Empress suddenly paused and looked at Rongjiu in shock. How does he know that place? Emperor Jiawen boomed. If I didn't remember wrongly, Heptagon Alley used to be a very lively place in the imperial city. However, after a murder happened, it was gradually abandoned. Father, you're wise. The current Heptagon Alley can be said to be deserted and very quiet. But for some reason, that place is highly favored by Her Majesty. After I returned to the imperial city, I didn't have much to do, so I occasionally strolled around the imperial city. Unintentionally, I saw Her Majesty at Heptagon Alley twice. The Empress's heart suddenly sank. Emperor Jiawen glanced at the Empress. Continue. The first time was 1.5 months ago. At that time, I saw Her Majesty from afar, and I thought I saw wrongly. After all, Heptagon Alley was very deserted, and not many people would go there normally. But because I was curious, I waited nearby for a while. After an hour, Her Majesty left. I followed closely behind and wanted to see what exactly was going on. However, I shockingly discovered that there was an extremely strong barrier in Heptagon Alley. The Empress's face was already ghastly pale. Rongjin suddenly thought of something, and his eyes shrunk. As I was worried that I would be discovered, I left. After a month, which was more than 10 days ago, I was curious and couldn't hold it in, so I went to Heptagon Alley again. I didn't expect to coincidentally see Her Majesty walk out there. Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue also looked at the Empress and saw her anxious expression as if she had lost her mind. I met her twice in a row, so I couldn't help but be suspicious. However, I didn't have a clue, so I didn't say anything. Coincidentally, I met Rongjin on the streets the day before, and I realized that the last place she went to was Heptagon Alley. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 370. Impossible. You're lying. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in and screamed. Her hands trembled as she pointed at Rongzhou. Due to her anger and panic, her originally well-maintained face became distorted. Zhenzhen is missing. She had already lost contact with Rongjin for many days. If Rongjin was really at Heptagon Alley, how could she not know? Previously, she had already asked the Xi family to secretly search the entire imperial city, but there was no news. After the matter was exposed, Emperor Zhaoan also sent people to search everywhere, but there were still no clues. She almost suspected that Rongjin had been brought out of the imperial city. Yet, Rongzhou suddenly jumped out and said that Rongjin was at Heptagon Alley. Rongzhou looked at the Empress's finger that was almost poking his face and saw the beautiful and sharp armor on it. His lips twitched without much of a smile. Her Majesty, why are you so agitated? Whether it's true or not, we just need to send people to search, and the truth will be revealed. Anyway, Heptagon Alley is in the imperial city. It won't waste too much time to send people to search. No. The Empress almost instinctively objected. But once she said that, she suddenly realized that something was amiss. Behind her, Emperor Zhaoan's voice was cold. I think this is a good idea. Since Rongzhou said that Rongjin is there, we just need to find her there. If we find her, it proves that Rongzhou is telling the truth. If we don't. Rongzhou, do you know what consequences you will have to bear? Rongzhou looked calm. I know. If Rongjin isn't at Heptagon Alley, I'm willing to never leave the imperial city again. Emperor Zhaoan was stunned as he didn't expect Rongzhou to make such a request. Actually, during this period, he had been thinking about how to arrange for Rongzhou. Let him return to the Northwest Army. Impossible. That's no different from letting a tiger return to the mountain. Let him stay in the imperial city. That's not appropriate either. Rongzhou has many military achievements, and he's at his peak. It's too obvious to abruptly remove him from his military position. In actual fact, before this, Emperor Zhaoan had already received many memorials requesting for Rongzhou to return to the Northwest Army. But he had many worries in his heart, so he kept putting this matter aside. But this time, Rongzhou took the initiative to suggest that as long as he didn't find Rongjin in Heptagon Alley, he would stay in the imperial city forever. On the one hand, Emperor Zhaoan wanted to find Rongjin. On the other hand, he wanted to use this chance to make Rongzhou stay. No matter how he looked at it, it was beneficial to him. Therefore, he agreed to this suggestion without any hesitation. We will go there personally. Get ready, Eunuch Min. The Empress' legs were weak, and she almost knelt on the ground. Your Majesty. Absolutely not. Anyone could tell how guilty the Empress was, and Emperor Zhaoan was no exception. The more this was the case, the more he wanted to go. Empress, I'm just going to find Rongzhen. What are your intentions for obstructing me in every possible way? Do you not want me to find Rongzhen, or is there another reason? Emperor Zhaoan's voice wasn't loud, but his aura was imposing. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly stabbed into the Empress's heart. She wanted to stop Emperor Zhaoan from going, but in this situation, she would seem very guilty no matter what she said. Rongjin finally recovered his senses and went forward to support the Empress. Imperial Mother. Why do you have to do this? Wasn't it just an alley? If Imperial Father wants to go, why must you stop him? There was no benefit in going against Imperial Father like this. The Empress glanced at Rongjin weakly, and her tears fell again. What does he know? Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up and said in a soft voice, Your Majesty, we'll go with you. You can get a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 371. Situ Xingchen felt that Chu Luiyue's words were ear-piercing. The look in her eyes changed, and the corners of her mouth curled up, but she quickly pulled it down. When Rongjin saw the bright smile on Chu Luiyue's face, he felt conflicted. Getting engaged with Situ Xingchen was his best choice now. When everything went smoothly, he secretly rejoiced. With Situ Xingchen around, everything would be much easier after that. He originally thought that he didn't care much about Chu Luiyue. After all, Situ Xingchen didn't lose to Chu Luiyue in any aspect. However, he only realized that this wasn't the case at this point. As for the Empress, she couldn't hear what Chu Luiyue was saying. She looked pitiful, and her eyes were lifeless as she looked at Emperor Zhaoan's cold and decisive back view. She felt hopeless. If it weren't for Rongjin and Situ Xingchen supporting her, she would have long collapsed on the floor. Chu Luiyue looked at the Empress in deep thought before he turned around and followed Chu Ning. When they reached the palace entrance, Eunuch Min had already arranged for a normal horse carriage to wait for them. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but sigh. Eunuch Min is indeed smart to be able to serve Emperor Zhaoan for so many years. Emperor Zhaoan is still wearing his dragon robe. If he goes out like this, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. Also, the Empress is in a terrible state, and she can't meet anyone. Using such a normal horse carriage can reduce the trouble to the greatest extent. The group of people then walked toward Heptagon Alley in a low-key manner. Emperor Zhaoan sat in his own horse carriage, and only Eunuch Min followed him. The rest of the people shared a horse carriage. In the horse carriage, everyone sat facing each other, and nobody spoke. The atmosphere was tense, and the air seemed to have frozen. Finally, Rongjin couldn't help but softly persuade her, Mother, don't worry. Someone wants to frame us, but they might not have the ability to do so. Father has always been wise, and he'll definitely be able to distinguish right from wrong and clear your name. This someone was naturally referring to Rongzhou. In Rongjin's opinion, if Rongzhou didn't interfere, this matter wouldn't have developed to this state. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Rongzhou, who was sitting opposite him, and hatred flashed across his eyes. Previously, because of Rongzhou, he was grounded by his father and had many of his rights taken away. This time, it was because of him. However, Rongzhou leaned against the wall with his eyes closed. His expression was calm as if he didn't care about all of this. Rongzhou, we have no feud with you. Aren't you afraid of retribution for framing us? Rongjin finally couldn't hold it in and questioned her softly. Rongzhou opened his eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. Imperial brother, why do you say that? I just wanted to help father find Rongzhen. What I said in the main hall was the truth. What do you mean by framing? Rongjin almost exploded in anger when he saw that Rongjin still refused to admit it. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a horse carriage and that there were many people around, he would have long gone forward and harshly beaten Rongjiu up. Chu Luiyue sat at the side and started chatting with Chu Ning. Father, actually, the trip to Tai Yen Academy this time was quite interesting. Chu Ning was originally a little worried, but he felt much more at ease when he saw that his daughter was very calm. Hearing her talk about Tai Yen Academy, he couldn't help but be curious. Oh. Really? I heard that their library is very big. What did you read? Chu Luiyue smiled and said, Actually, I didn't read much. Actually, I didn't look at many, but I did find some that I liked. At the side, Situ Xingchen's eyelids harshly twitched. Didn't read much. Chu Luiyue really has the cheek to say this. I clearly remember that not long after Chu Luiyue went in, the records outside were already stacked up. The more hateful thing was that, according to Mentor, she even found an Earth Stage warrior technique. Even though Situ Xingchen had always been studying celestial physician and wasn't very interested in warrior techniques, she still felt very disgusted when she saw that Chu Luiyue had obtained such a treasure. Every word of hers sounded like she was purposely showing off. Situ Xingchen couldn't maintain the smile on her face as she looked down and pretended to be quiet. The Empress gradually regained her senses. When she saw Chu Luiyue and Chu Ningjing chatting happily, her heart burned with anger. All of this is clearly Chu Luiyue's fault. I must have hidden Rongzhen and colluded with Rongjiu to frame me. Now, my heart is hanging in midair, and I'm being tortured, but Chu Luiyue can still smile so easily. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Hearing the sound of the horse carriage on the limestone floor, the Empress knew that they were getting closer to Heptagon Alley, and she became increasingly anxious. Finally, she couldn't help but curse and pounce on Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue had already seen her actions from the corner of his eyes, so he gently dodged and avoided her. Dong! A low sound was heard. The Empress's head directly hit the wall of the horse carriage. Mother! Rongjin and Situ Xingchen didn't manage to pull the Empress back in time. When they heard the sound, it was already too late. The Empress's forehead hurt, and her vision turned black. Mother, are you okay? Rongjin was very anxious as he hurriedly helped the Empress up. Situ Xingchen knitted her brows. Miss Chu, even if you're unhappy with the Empress, you shouldn't do this. During this period of time, the fourth princess went missing, and the Empress was worried. How could she withstand such a collision? Upon hearing this, Rongjin looked at Chu Luiyue with more hatred and anger. Chu Luiyue blinked. Eldest Princess Situ, your words are too interesting. Everyone saw clearly what happened just now. The Empress bumped into me on her own. If I didn't dodge, should I just sit there and wait to be hit? Situ Xingchen seemed to hesitate for a while and said, but you're very strong, and it's easy for you to stop the Empress. In other words, Chu Luiyue did it on purpose. Chu Luiyue laughed. Eldest Princess Situ, the Crown Prince isn't weak either. Are you saying that he's useless and can't hold his mother back? Situ Xingchen was stumped. She didn't expect Chu Luiyue to be so sharp-tongued. Knock, knock, knock. Masters, we're here. Please come down. Eunuch Min knocked on the door outside. Rongjiu walked out first. Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning followed closely behind. The horse carriage stopped in a narrow alley, and Emperor Jiawen stood at the entrance of a nearby mansion. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned his surroundings and knitted his brows. This heptagon alley looked normal, but it vaguely had a very strong suppression. If one looked closely, they could sense that it came from the mansion. Emperor Jiawen looked at Chu Ning. Open the door. Chu Ning immediately said, yes. But before he could do anything, the door was already open from the inside. The slender Rongzhen appeared in front of the crowd. Mother, you're here, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 372. Upon seeing that the person in front of her was actually Emperor Joan, Rongjin stopped talking, and panic flashed across her eyes. Father. When Emperor Joan saw Rongjin, he first heaved a sigh of relief in his heart before endless anger overwhelmed him. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice, Jinzhen, why are you here? Faced with Emperor Joan's questioning, Rongjin actually stuttered and didn't say anything for a while. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and turned to look at Rongjin and Situ Xingqian, who had just helped the Empress down the carriage. Her Majesty, Crown Prince, isn't the fourth princess here perfectly fine? Rongjin looked up and saw Rongjin standing at the door. His words were stuck in his throat, and his face turned green and white. At the side, Situ Xingqian's expression also changed. Why is Rongjin here? Didn't Elder Lian Ning say that he personally saw Chu Luiyue being brought to the forest outside the imperial city by Si Meng? Since Si Meng died in Chu Luiyue's hands, Rongjin should have been hidden by her too. What's the situation now? Rongjin instinctively looked at the Empress. Mother, this, impossible. When the Empress saw Rongjin, her reaction was more intense than anyone else's. She actually broke free from Rongjin and staggered toward Rongjin. Impossible. Jinzhen isn't here. You must be a fake. Her voice was sharp and hoarse, which made people feel very uncomfortable when they heard it. In addition, her face was distorted from shock and fear, which made her look even uglier. Emperor Joan didn't hide the disgust in his eyes. Empress. Not only did you lie to me, but you even don't want to acknowledge your own daughter. You've really disappointed me. No matter what, he had doted on Rongjin for more than 10 years, so he was very sure that the person in front of him was Rongjin. To prove her innocence, the Empress actually lied through her teeth. How crazy! Rongjin seemed to be frightened by the Empress as she nervously took a step back. Mother, what do you mean? I'm Jinzhen. You're not Jinzhen. Aren't you? The Empress glared at Rongjin. Although she was still denying it, her voice was getting softer and softer. This person was indeed Rongjin. A sense of despair gradually filled his heart. Tell me quickly. Was it Chu Luiyue who sent you here? It must be her, right? The Empress was on the verge of breaking down. She looked like a lunatic. Emperor Joan's eyes were cold. Rongjin, say it yourself. What the hell is going on? Rongjin was stunned by the scene before her, and it took her a while to recover her senses. Yes. It was Chu Luiyue who brought me here. Emperor Joan continued asking, when? Rongjin quickly glanced at the Empress and lowered her eyes guiltily. Before Chu Luiyue went to Tai Yen Academy, 4th Princess, you must be joking. How come I didn't know about this? Besides, if I really wanted to imprison you, why would I choose to imprison you here of all places? Chu Luiyue scanned his surroundings. To be honest, this is my first time here. On the other hand, Her Majesty. I heard from the 3rd Prince that you come here quite frequently. What's wrong with me that I have to hide the 4th Princess here? Rongjin instantly panicked. It's you. It's you. You have a grudge against me, so, it should be the 4th Princess who has a grudge against me, right? After all. To be honest, I've never been taken advantage of by you before, so why would I have a grudge against you? Chu Luiyue spoke nonchalantly. Even though his words were unpleasant, everyone present knew that it was the truth. Rongjin previously made things difficult for Chu Luiyue at the palace banquet, but she ended up in an embarrassing state. Later on, her pearl of essence broke, and she became a good-for-nothing. However, Chu Luiwa transformed into a genius that everyone envied. He was even picked by Mu Qinghe and had the chance to go to the Tianling dynasty. If we're talking about jealousy, Rongzhen should be the one who can't stand Chu Luiwa. Rongzhen was even more embarrassed. Rongjiu lightly said, "Father, now you can believe that I'm telling the truth, right?" Emperor Zhaowen's face was terrifyingly dark. "Rongzhen, move aside. I want to see what secrets there are inside. If the Empress secretly comes here often, she can definitely find out something." Rongzhen bit her lips and hesitated for a while, but she refused to move. "Father, there's nothing inside. You shouldn't come in. I said, move aside," hollered Emperor Zhaowen. Rongzhen was so frightened that she shuddered, and her face turned pale. Eunuch Min tried his best to persuade her. "Fourth princess, please let me pass. Do you really think that you can stop His Majesty with just you? Things have already reached this stage, yet Rongzhen is still like this. Isn't she just making things difficult for herself?" Rongzhen's eyes reddened as she looked at the Empress timidly. Emperor Zhaowen sneered. "Why are you looking at her? Are my words not as important as the Empress's?" Rongjin immediately went forward and anxiously said, "Father. Father. Please don't misunderstand. Rongjin didn't mean it that way." Emperor Zhaowen couldn't be bothered with him as he looked at the Empress deeply. "Empress, now that things have reached this stage, are you going to follow me in or continue acting dumb here?" The Empress whimpered, and her tears kept falling, looking very pitiful. However, Emperor Zhaowen felt even more disgusted when he saw this. He lifted his foot and walked forward. Chu Ning immediately followed and said, "This formation is special. Your Majesty, this barrier is a little special. I'm afraid it's not good to barge in. Why don't you let me break this barrier first?" Emperor Zhaowen stood still. "Okay." Force gathered in Chu Ning's palm, and a strong suppression gradually spread out. Then, he raised his hand, and a strong force suddenly flew out. Hong! The transparent barrier suffered a powerful impact, and ripples began to form. The terrifying force spread in all directions. Rongzhen, who was standing inside the barrier, was caught off guard and was affected by the force. She moved back a few steps and almost fell to the ground. She finally steadied herself and anxiously turned around as if she was afraid of something. Just as Chu Ning was about to attack again, Rongzhen finally couldn't help but shout, "Stop fighting. I'll just open the barrier." Rongzhen. When the Empress heard this, she seemed to be agitated as she immediately screamed. Rongzhen was shocked as she shrunk her shoulders. "Mother, father is already here. He'll know sooner or later." As she spoke, her hand trembled as she touched the barrier. Chu Luiwa focused his gaze. There seemed to be something hidden in Rongzhen's palm. Buzz! With a buzz, the barrier suddenly opened from the middle. Emperor Zhaowen walked forward first. "Mother!" Rongjin gasped. The crowd turned around and saw that the Empress had suddenly fainted. Chu Luiwa clicked his tongue. "Isn't it a little too late to pretend to faint now?" Emperor Zhaowen didn't seem to care as he walked straight in. Chu Luiwa and Chu Ning followed closely behind. When they saw the scene in the courtyard clearly, even Chu Luiwa couldn't help but gasp. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 373. The courtyard was empty, and only a skeleton was hanging in the middle. From the tattered clothes, it seemed to be a young man, but his body was almost completely corroded, and one couldn't see his original appearance. The most serious injury on his entire body was his face. It was as if someone had harshly slashed his face with an axe. His face was a mess of flesh and blood, and one couldn't even distinguish his features, let alone recognize who he was. Below the corpse was a bronze cauldron. The edges of the bronze cauldron were stained with dried blood. The pungent smell of blood spread from within. It was disgusting. However, this wasn't the scariest thing. This was because there were a few skeletons on the ground around the corpse. With one look, one could tell that they were human skeletons. Unlike the hanging corpses, only white bones were left on the ground, and they looked like they had been dead for a long time. This scene caused the hearts and minds of the people who walked in to be shaken. The place fell into dead silence, and the space seemed to have frozen. After some time, Emperor Jiawen recovered his senses and suddenly hollered, "Bring the Empress over." The Emperor was enraged. Even Rongjin, who was previously protecting the Empress, couldn't take it as he stiffly carried the Empress over. The Empress's eyes were still tightly shut as if she had completely fainted. Emperor Jiawen stared at the skeletons, and the veins on his forehead popped out. "Beat her. If the Empress still doesn't wake up, continue to beat her." The crowd was stunned. Emperor Jiawen actually ordered people to beat the Empress. He was really mad. How could Rongjin bear to do this? He also couldn't watch others beat up his mother. He hurriedly blocked the Empress and knelt down. "Father. The truth hasn't been found yet. If you treat mother like this, you'll hurt her." Emperor Jiawen hurriedly walked forward and harshly kicked Rongjin's shoulder. "Get lost." Rongjin didn't dare to resist and was directly kicked to the side. Emperor Jiawen raised his hand and was about to slap the Empress. Situ Xingqian stood at the side. Even though she didn't want to be involved, she had no choice. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen had already lifted the Empress up, Situ Xingqian finally spoke. "Your Majesty, please reconsider. The Crown Prince was right. Nothing was clear yet. Why not wait until everything was clear before making a decision? At that time, if the Empress is really guilty, it won't be too late for you to punish her personally." Emperor Jiawen paused in his actions. At this moment, the Empress who had fainted suddenly woke up. She slowly opened her eyes and was dazed when she saw Emperor Jiawen's face right in front of her. "Your Majesty," then, she seemed to have just realized that Emperor Jiawen was grabbing her collar, and her face was filled with shock and panic. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" Emperor Jiawen sneered and directly pushed her to the ground. "Don't you know what good things you've done? You'd better tell me clearly what's going on." The Empress knelt on the ground, weeping and complaining about her ignorance. "I don't know. I really don't know." Emperor Jiawen looked at Rongjin. "Rongjin, tell me." Rongjin timidly took a step back, and her lips trembled. "Your Majesty, there's something strange about this bronze cauldron." Chu Ning walked to the bronze cauldron and carefully inspected it with a solemn expression. "This thing seems to be able to swallow a person's force." Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but walk over. Once she got close, she felt a sinister aura seeping out from the bronze cauldron. The next moment, that aura enveloped her. It's dangerous." Upon seeing this, Chu Ning immediately wanted to pull Chu Luiyue away. However, Chu Luiyue shook her head and signaled for him to wait for a while. Then, she felt that the force in her body started to stir under the aura's envelopment. She looked at the bronze cauldron. Black and red mixed together, and that aura suddenly became stronger. She knitted her brows. "This aura actually wants to forcefully strip my force from my body." She backed away without hesitation. After leaving the bronze cauldron, that aura quickly disappeared as if it had never appeared. However, Chu Luiyue felt a chill in his heart. Just now, she had been greatly affected just by standing at the side, let alone the person who was hanging above the bronze vat. Furthermore, that person's body was riddled with wounds and stained with blood. It was obvious that he had suffered many wounds when he was alive. When his blood dripped onto the wounds, his origin power was naturally harvested even more cleanly. Chu Luiyue was almost certain that that person's origin power had been continuously devoured, and finally died from exhaustion. No, it wasn't just that person. The bones around him should be the same. Chu Ning pulled Chu Luiyue over and heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was fine. This bronze cauldron is an item of great evil and great yin. You must not go near it. Emperor Zhaoan frowned. Chu Ning, what did you say about the bronze cauldron? Chu Ning explained once more. Therefore, this bronze cauldron must have been deliberately placed here by someone to devour the power of other cultivators. As expected, after hearing this, Emperor Zhaoan didn't look shocked at all. Instead, he seemed to have confirmed something. I've once heard of something similar in the royal family's secret history. As long as one gathers enough energy, this bronze cauldron can be upgraded to a higher grade yuan instrument. Whoever becomes its owner will be able to obtain all the energy it contains and greatly increase their cultivation level. Emperor Zhaoan's words made everyone's hair stand on end. Such a method could be said to be extremely vicious and cruel. And the only person who knows about this. Other than me, only the Empress knows about this. Emperor Zhaoan's sentence was like a bolt of lightning that struck them. Everyone looked at the Empress. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. No wonder Emperor Zhaoan's attitude toward the Empress became even worse when he came in and saw the bronze cauldron. It turns out that he had already determined that the Empress did all of this back then. Si Huijing. I didn't expect you to do such a thing in secret. You're really vicious. Once Emperor Zhaoan thought of how he had actually shared a bed with such a woman for so many years, he felt goosebumps all over his body, and he was so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. The Empress's face was dejected, and she couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Rongjin also panicked and couldn't help but argue. Father, even if Mother knows about it, it can't prove that she did it. Mother is already the Empress. What benefits does she have by doing this? Yeah, Her Majesty is already the mother of the country. Why isn't she satisfied? Rongjiu suddenly spoke up as he looked down at the mother-son duo, and his eyes were filled with obscurity. Of course, she didn't do this for herself. She did it for the honorable crown prince, brother, you. Rongjin was shocked. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 374. Rongjiu. Don't spout nonsense. Rongjin instinctively wanted to retort. I'm the crown prince, and I'm considered one of the top cultivators. Why do I have to resort to such means? All these years, I've always relied on my own abilities to cultivate, and I've never taken any shortcuts. I've also never used such sinister means. I can swear on my life. Rongjin also swore. He was very clear that in this situation, he would be doomed if he didn't quickly extricate himself and his mother from this matter. However, his words seemed very weak in comparison to the Empress's reaction. Si Huijing, what are your intentions for doing this? Emperor Zhaoan didn't listen to Rongjin at all. He had already confirmed that the Empress did all of this. The tears on the Empress's face had already dried, and only despair was left. Emperor Zhaoan glanced at Rongjin and Rongzhen and sneered. You don't want to say. That's good too. Rongjin and Rongzhen can't escape the blame either. And Rongqi. I must have been blind back then to choose you as the Empress. I even made Rongjin the crown prince. Chu Ning. Rongjiu. Immediately searched the entire place. Yes. The duo didn't hesitate at all as they answered in unison. Then, they split up and started searching in different directions. Rongjin wanted to say something but didn't. It seemed like she wanted to stop them, but she just stood there anxiously in the end. Eunuch Min stood behind Emperor Joan, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. As it involved the Empress and the rest, this trip was very low-key, and they didn't even bring any guards. They didn't expect such a shocking secret to be exposed. Chu Luiyue looked at the messy scene in front of him and raised his brows slightly as he looked up at the sky. Country Yao Chen's sky is finally going to change. When the Empress heard Emperor Zhaowen's words, she finally realized something. Emperor Zhaowen is planning to punish both her and her son. It's fine if something happens to me, but Rongjin's position as the crown prince can't be snatched away. Seeing that Chu Ning and Rongjiu had already started searching inside, she shivered and directly kowtowed to Emperor Zhaowen to admit her guilt. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I know my mistake. You can punish me however you want, but please let my children off. They're all innocent. They didn't know anything about this. She smashed her head on the ground with all her might. With a dull thud, her forehead was soon bleeding profusely. Her makeup had long been ruined by her tears. Coupled with the bright red and sticky blood slowly flowing down from her forehead, she looked even more miserable. Emperor Zhaowen was unmoved as if he had heard a joke. You don't know. Rongjin is right here, and you're telling me that she doesn't know anything? The queen was speechless. In actual fact, she didn't know why Rongjin was here either. She did this very secretly, so Rongjin and the rest didn't know about it, including Rongjin. Even if she was crazy, she wouldn't send Rongjin here. But Rongjin was indeed here. There was no room for argument. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt hatred toward Rongjin. If it weren't for her, why would Emperor Zhaowen find this place? Then, he wouldn't have seen everything here. They also wouldn't suspect Rongjin and the rest because of her existence. She looked at Rongjin and pleaded. Jinjin, tell your imperial father yourself how you came to be here, okay? Take it that I'm begging you. You don't want your big brother and second brother to suffer with you, right? Ha! You can't drag them down with you. Rongjin's eyes trembled. Many scenes suddenly appeared in her mind. How familiar was this scene? Ever since I was young, Imperial Mother would say something like this every time I met with something, right? Her eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of fog. Then, she lowered her head slightly and said clearly, word by word, you're right. Imperial Father, it was Imperial Mother who sent me here. The Queen's voice suddenly stopped, and she looked at Rongjin in disbelief. Mother said that this was the only way to help me take revenge for Chu Luiyue. Also, she could pin Elder Si Meng's death on them. Every word Rongjin said made the Queen's eyes widen. After hearing this, she was completely dazed. Soon after, the Empress suddenly realized something and screamed, "You're wrong. Your Majesty. Everything she said is fake. It's all fake. Don't believe her." Emperor Zhaowen glanced at her and nonchalantly said, "You're saying that your biological daughter is framing you?" The Queen felt very aggrieved, but she didn't know what to say. She also didn't know why Rongjin would say this. Emperor Zhaowen stepped forward and asked, "Rongjin, did you just say that Si Meng died in your mother's hands?" Rongjin shuddered and lightly pointed at the bronze vat before quickly retracting her hand as if she were afraid of something. However, this action was clear enough. She was clearly saying that Si Meng had already died in the bronze vat. I almost forgot that he's a stage 5 warrior. Taking away such a strong warrior's strength is naturally twice the result with half the effort. Chu Luiyue silently sized Rongjin up. I only left for 10 days, so why did so many things happen in the imperial city? If I didn't clearly remember that I killed Si Meng, I would have really believed Rongjin's previous words. The Queen's face flushed red and white, and she was about to argue. Your Majesty. Father. Chu Ning and Rong Jiu came back one after another. The duo's expressions were strange. Emperor Jiaowen's heart sank. What's the matter? Chu Ning and Rong Jiu looked at each other and seemed hesitant. After a moment, Chu Ning cupped his fists. Your Majesty, there are many skeletons buried in the backyard. Rong Jiu hurriedly added. There are more or less some scattered bones hidden in the various rooms in this yard. Roughly looking, there are about 100 people. Dead silence. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but frown. When she saw the bronze vat, she thought that there must be more than just a few skeletons here. However, she didn't expect there to be so many. Most of those people are cultivators. There haven't been any missing persons cases in the Imperial City all these years, so, these people should have been brought in from outside the Imperial City, said Chu Ning solemnly. Emperor Jiawen took a deep breath in and stared at the queen. Si Huijing, you can't do all of this by yourself. Tell me, who's helping you? The Si family. Hearing Emperor Jiawen mention the Si family, the queen immediately shook her head out of reflex. No. I did all of this by myself. I was blinded for a moment. I'm willing to use my death to atone for my sins. I only beg your Majesty to let Rong Jin, Rong Qi, and the Si family off. Rong Jin finally couldn't help but say. Mother. What are you doing? You didn't do this, right? Who's the one harming you? Just say it, Pack. The queen actually slapped Rong Jin harshly. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.